Greetings, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is Recap Thursday. And let me tell you, it has been one hell of a week. It has literally just been the first week of January. Arguably the first 8 days since it's, the 8th. So, we covered a lot of what was going on in Venezuela yesterday. We also were able to lightly touch on several other issues, such as invading Greenland, Colombia, and Cuba. But we did not get to take care of the other issues, such as, ICE murdering a woman in cold blood, among many other things that have just happened in just the past 7 days. So, there is definitely a lot to talk about. I won't I won't be on this soapbox for too terribly long. We'll get to the stream. It's just I'm speaking to co-workers and friends and other activists online, and I'm asking them point blank, like, what can I do more? Like, what else could I or should I be doing? Like, what can I do to alleviate the stress and fatigue of suffering that we are all going through? And people are resoundingly responding with, like, you're doing everything that you can do. You don't have money. You don't have power and wealth and influence. So you're using a platform. You're building a platform. You're running for office. That you can't do more than what you're capable of. And then I asked them, I'm like, well, how are you feeling? And it's like, what are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you in your efforts? And they're saying, dude, I'm just trying to get through the day. So in that spirit, we are going to be covering a lot of things that are dystopian nightmares while living in a fascist regime. But do not despair, right? Because that is the goal of any fascist regime, is to wear down the opposition morally, mentally, psychologically, physically, financially, just general health, right? So with that in mind, we are doing something powerful. We might not be leading the revolution. We might not be galvanizing all of America to unite under our unified voice, but we are making a difference. We are doing something. And that act of defiance, of dissent, is more than what the government wants from us. They want us to comply. They want us to be silent. They want us to bury our heads in the sand and give up, as if there is nothing that we can do about it. So we'll get through these videos, we'll get through this stream, and hopefully by the end of it, we're filled with a sense of purpose instead of frustration. All right. It wouldn't be a Recap Thursday if we didn't start off with Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, with Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report. And then we're going to get right into Minneapolis, which is going to cover the first half of our first portion of our stream. Then into Venezuela, Colombia, and I mean, there's not really much good news to go around. So let's get into this headlines. Let's get into those headlines. There it is.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Minnesota, thousands gathered in a Minneapolis neighborhood Wednesday evening for a candlelight vigil to mourn a 37-year-old Twin Cities resident who was shot and killed by an ICE agent earlier in the day, shortly after she dropped off her 6-year-old son at school. Renee Good was a mother of 3 who lived in South Minneapolis with her partner, just blocks from where a masked ICE officer fired 3 shots at her at point-blank range. Good's mother described her as loving, forgiving, affectionate, and an amazing human being. She was killed blocks from the site of George Floyd's murder in 2020 by Minneapolis police officers, a killing that sparked protests internationally under the banner Black Lives Matter. Video of Good's killing quickly quickly spread across the internet, sparking protests and demands for accountability. The footage shows masked ICE agents approaching a vehicle being driven by Good, screaming for her to get out of the effing car, using profanity, attempting to pull her driver's side door open. As Good backs up her car slightly, then attempts to drive past the officers, a masked agent pulls out a gun and fires 3 rounds into Good's vehicle, which then crashes into a nearby car. Another video shows the aftermath. Outraged residents, including a doctor, screaming at the agents to let them check the mortally wounded driver for a pulse while she's seen bleeding, limp, and slumped against her car's blood-soaked airbag.
We will be covering several videos on this subject, so I'm not gonna interfere too much, but you can hear the vitriol in Amy's voice. She has a lot of fire in a lot of the reporting that she does, but there are times like this right here where you can really feel it, where you can really feel the flames and rage that she's got going on. So we will 100% be digging into this story later on in the stream.
Can I go check a pulse?
No! Back up! Now!
I'm a physician!
I don't care!
We understand. We got EMS coming, and I get it. Just give us a second.
We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relax? You just killed my neighbor!
Witnesses say medics responded.
When the news is worse than any movie or video game, it just...
To the shooting were forced to approach on foot after federal agents obstructed their access to the scene while pepper spraying bystanders who protested the killing. Good was ultimately brought to the Hennepin County Medical Center, where she was pronounced dead on arrival. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem accused Good of weaponizing her vehicle to commit a, quote, act of domestic terrorism. And in a social media post, President Trump falsely claimed Good had, quote, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense, unquote. Trump went on to say, quote, it's hard to believe he's alive, but is now recovering in the hospital, unquote. Video from the scene shows the ICE agent walking away after the shooting with no signs of injuries. Minnesota officials condemned those remarks. Democratic Governor Tim Walz issued an order to prepare to mobilize the Minnesota National Guard, calling Good's killing preventable and unnecessary. This is Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
This comes after the Trump administration ordered a surge of 2,000 ICE agents to the Twin Cities this week, after President Trump called the region's large Somali community garbage and accused state officials of failing to root out fraud in social services programs. The killing of Renee Good was at...
I did not realize she was going to spend the whole time. I guess we may as well cover this then. Mind you, Trump sent 2,000 ICE agents to Minneapolis after claiming that we were not going to be doing, massive deployments of ICE agents in U.S. cities, and then turned right around and did the largest deployment to date. And it immediately resulted in the murder of a civilian. And honestly, we could specify and highlight the fact that she's an American citizen, and that would be valid to say. But the fact that ICE agents are murdering civilians, people generally, is the point, is the problem, is the fact that instead of universally condemning this action, you got Kristi Noem being the head of the SS, trying to victim blame and accuse the victim of deserving it. Well, I'm sorry, under our Constitution, our laws, and yes, international law, there is no such thing as legal extrajudicial killing. right? There has to be due process. If there was a warrant and she resisted with lethal force, yeah, then you can kill her. But there in no way, form, or fashion was a warrant involved. They don't have the jurisdiction or the ability to interfere with or command American citizens in the first place, which is paramount as to why ICE agents need warrants regardless. And again, after the major surge that the administration promised wasn't going to happen. Suffice to say, this is very preventable, and the fact that our government is not only covering it up by sending the ICE agent to the hospital, when you have the entire leadership trying to spread misinformation and lies about the incident itself, and not even attempting to defend the American citizen who was murdered by a government official, or at least representative, deputized government official. And the fact that the person didn't even hesitate to shoot. The fact that they had no compunction whatsoever about murdering somebody in broad daylight and in cold blood. Again, use of force training dictates that unless your life is in imminent danger, like imminent, as in there is a knife barreling towards you or a gun pointed at your head, you are not authorized to use lethal force, ever. So, the fact that we live in a police state that has normalized police brutality for the past 20, 30 years, and now we have a lawless domestic terrorist police force acting on behalf of the government, we have no means of protecting ourselves legally other than the fact that the Second Amendment exists. But the problem is, the Second Amendment exists if the judicial system says it does. But it keeps going back to the criminal justice system works differently for those it wants to protect and those it wants to harm. But if we have ICE acting with no oversight and with absolute impunity, that means they essentially have a license to kill, and now they're exercising it. And now they're going to try and normalize this shooting in the media so that when the next one happens, we're numb to it. And then the one after that and the one after that until it becomes normal that if you see ICE, stay away from them because they will simply kill you in cold blood. And once it gets to that point, I mean, I don't know what to tell you folks, but we don't want to be around making those decisions once we're at that point. So.
At least the 9th time federal immigration officers have fired on people since September. 5 people have died in mass deportation operations since President Trump retook the White House. After headlines, will go to Minneapolis for the latest. Illinois Democratic Congressmember Robin Kelly has announced plans to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in the wake of Wednesday's fatal shooting by an ICE officer, calling her an incompetent leader and a disgrace to our democracy. Kelly's 3 articles of impeachment allege Noem has engaged in obstruction of justice, violation of public trust, and self-dealing. Kelly wrote in a statement, quote, "From Chicago to Charlotte to Los Angeles to Minneapolis, Secretary Noem is violating the Constitution while ruining and ending lives and separating families."
What I'm not understanding is Representative Robin Kelly from Illinois, a Democrat, is willing to send impeachment articles against Kristi Noem, but not Trump, not Hegseth, not RFK Jr., Dr. Oz, the WWE wrestler lady. So you're going to impeach Kristi Noem, which, okay, fine, yeah. But you're not going to go after Stephen Miller or Tom Homan? Like, the entire administration is a who's who of fascist pieces of garbage. They all need to go. Starting with Trump. Going through Vance, all the way across every member of the cabinet. And then maybe starting to look inward within the halls of Congress and going after your Republican counterparts who are aiding and abetting this lawless administration. So, granted, it's also articles of impeachment that is being started by a Democrat in a Republican-controlled House. So, even any teeth behind this? How many people are co-signing? How many people are already pledging to support this impeachment process? And even then, is this administration going to honor it? Because again, if the Supreme Court can rule against this administration time and time again, this administration can violate it time and time again, and nothing is happening, no arrests, no fines, no penalties, then who's to say that even a successful impeachment passing the House and the Senate would actually result in the Kristi Noem actually being removed? So
it's one thing to be incompetent and dangerous. It's impeachable to break the rule of law, she said.
No, it's not one thing to be incompetent and dangerous. The dangerous part is the breaking the rule of law. If you are a clear and present threat to society, to Americans, to migrants, to anybody, that is already breaking the law. If your actions and your leadership are endangering people, that's breaking the fucking law. Again, these impeachment articles should have been filed pretty much January 22nd, let alone January 8th, almost a year later.
The Trump administration's announced plans to control sales of Venezuela's oil indefinitely, as it demands Venezuela's government cut ties with U.S. adversaries, including Cuba, China, Iran, and Russia. On Wednesday, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the U.S. would continue to dictate policy to Venezuela's interim leaders after the abduction of President Nicolas Maduro in a bloody U.S. military raid on Caracas early Saturday morning.
Now, we did go into this in much greater detail yesterday, but suffice to say, America has no authority, right, jurisdiction, or justification to tell Venezuela a goddamn thing, let alone who to or who to not sell their oil to. And again, the fact that we are openly and brazenly saying this out loud on the world stage, publicly, for the whole world to see, on live television, to be recorded and distributed for the trials to come, is insane. We are literally, we've passed the point of no return. We're not going back to normal. We're not going back to democracy of the 90s, right? We're not going back to the politics of pre-Reagan era, right? And even then, regime change has been a staple of American politics. So unfortunately, as far as this goes, this has been the bread and butter for the past 200 years. My main point here, though, is America is deliberately occupying and toppling a sovereign state for our own goals and trying to dictate terms. Now, again, I don't know what else is going to be covered in this video, but there are videos that we are going to cover about Colombia sending the military, their military, into Venezuela to oust the occupying force, the United States of America. So there's all sorts of escalation happening in the region, and the fact that these things are happening and that this administration feels comfortable in carrying out these atrocities, defending ICE and the cold-blooded murder of an American, of a civilian, tells me, at the very least, that this administration is confident in its lack of repercussions and its consolidation of power and control and authority. Which means we haven't quite reached the point of no return, whereas by definition, they can't be held accountable anymore without significant uprising. But we are steadily approaching it. Again, I don't know what the point of no return is necessarily going to look like, but it's probably going to be whenever elections get canceled or heavily interfered with, or the Democratic Party is no longer allowed to function. At that point, the entrenchment of power is pretty much in place, and it would require a massive uprising to overthrow.
Morning.
The president is fully deploying his peace through strength foreign policy agenda. So we're continuing to be in close coordination with the interim authorities, and their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America.
Which, again, as I just mentioned, as we had just spent, Caroline Leavitt, speaking on behalf of the United States of America to the press pool there, we are going to dictate policy. Or what was the exact phrasing?
Agenda. So we're continuing to be in close coordination with the interim authorities, and their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America.
So their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America. Right. And peace through strength. You mean invasion. Peace through empire. Yeah, you can't be at war with anybody if you've conquered them and then annexed their lands and then subjugated her people. Of course, that only facilitates future uprising and civil unrest, where the more people you get involved in being angry with you, the harder it is to stamp out dissent, because you will eventually spread your forces too thin, which is why a military takeover through empire has failed over and over and over again throughout history. And that will not be any different here in modern times. But I digress.
On Wednesday, U.S. forces seized 2 tankers linked to Venezuelan oil exports, one in the Caribbean, the other a Russian-flagged tanker in the North Atlantic that the U.S. had pursued for weeks. In response, Russia accused the U.S. of violating maritime law, calling for the release of the ship's crew. Their capture came as Vice President J.D. Vance reiterated the Trump administration would have complete control of Venezuela's oil reserves. In Caracas, interim President Delcy Rodriguez defended plans to cede control of Venezuela's oil to the United States.
Venezuela está abierta a relaciones.
Venezuela is open to energy relations where all parties benefit, where economic cooperation is very well determined in commercial contracts.
On Wednesday, President...
Well, I think we're covering that later on, too, that the interim president of Venezuela seems to be actually capitulating to the United States, which is feeding the fuel that maybe she was actually part of this coup d'etat, and that's one of the reasons why the consolidation of power was so clean. But the fact that we're targeting Venezuela, threatening Colombia, Cuba, Greenland, but also now instigating directly with Russia instead of through the Ukrainian proxy, and of course China as well, and Iran, like, we're going to have way too many conflicts on way too many fronts that we do not have any ability to deal with for any extended length of time. And the fact that this is happening in the first week of the new year is not a good sign for things to come.
President Trump told the New York Times he expects the United States will be running Venezuela for years to come. Meanwhile, Venezuela's Interior Minister...
Again, we don't have the authority to run Venezuela. We have no justification or jurisdiction to run Venezuela. Like, it cannot be stressed enough that there is no legal grounds to do any of this. None.
Minister said 100 people were killed in the U.S. attack that removed President Maduro from power on Saturday. We'll have more on Venezuela later in the broadcast. President Trump praised Colombia's President Gustavo Petro after the 2 leaders held a more than hour-long phone call Wednesday. It was a stark shift of tone after Trump previously threatened to attack Colombia and called the Colombian leader a sick man involved in the cocaine trade. After Wednesday's call, Trump said it was his great honor to hold the conversation, adding he's planning to invite President Petro to the White House. Petro responded from a rally in Bogota.
Que la paz se encuentra hablando. Y por eso...
Peace is found through dialogue, and that's why I accept President Trump's proposal to talk. We'll see what comes of it. I'll keep insisting that an alliance is possible in clean energy, because it brings peace and life and love. Colombia knows how to take advantage of peace.
President...
Okay, what? Did we not have a video about how Colombia is sending 30,000 troops to Venezuela? Like, literally. This is on our playlist. That was 20 hours ago. This video was 8 hours ago. So did something happen overnight? Is that what we're hearing? Like, okay, I guess we're gonna fucking get to it.
Trump announced Wednesday the U.S. will withdraw from dozens of international and United Nations entities, including the UN Framework Convention.
Okay.
And
the United States is withdrawing from international organizations, conventions, and treaties that are contrary to the interests of the United States. We're already in the face-to-face scene today. If the United States of America is withdrawing from the United Nations, NATO, and other international organizations and so on and so forth, then America fully intends, under this administration, to violate them with extreme prejudice and does not even want the even semblance of accountability to be had. That is probably, again, this is dated January 7th. This is all happening within the first week of the new year, 2 weeks before the full anniversary of this first year of his second term. I don't really know how to really hit this point home any further. America is effectively a rogue nation. Effectively. And we are already invading other countries and threatening to do it to others, probably with the intent to follow through, regardless of whatever talks or negotiations occur. There's only one eventual outcome that those actions can cause, and that is outright war. No amount of diplomacy or economic sanctions is going to curb America from doing this unless the entire world gangs up on the United States and completely isolates us from the global economy. That is the only way in which America can be defeated outside of war. And yes, we can 100% lose a war if the entire world chooses to unite against us. And that is essentially what we are positioning ourselves to do. And I don't understand what military leadership convinced this administration, whether that's Pete Hegseth, whether that's Trump, whether that's Tulsi Gabbard, whether that's Tom Homan or Stephen Miller, that America can win a multi-front war with every major power on planet Earth at the same time, because that is simply not true. And if nukes get involved, everybody loses anyway. So, like, that's not even on the table. We cannot win a conventional war. We just cannot win a conventional war with every country on planet Earth. And if every country on planet Earth allows us to conquer the global south of the Western Hemisphere, we're gonna come for them next. Like, that's the reality. You don't just stop once you're ahead. Hence why, if this isn't shut down now, and if these actions of withdrawing from the United Nations, all these other treaties and organizations, isn't brought to bear now, it's going to be too late later when we are acting of our own volition, being the rogue state of the world. Never mind the world police, we are going to be the world terrorist force. And apparently acting on behalf and at the behest of Israel on top of that. Now, I don't know how much influence Israel has in these decisions, to be fair. But it doesn't change the fact that if we're invading other countries and we're allowing Israel to commit genocide in Palestine, and the global distraction is now focused on American interventionism and regime change, there's nothing stopping Israel from violating the ceasefire outright and massacring every Palestinian that's left. There are so many things that could, can, and will go wrong in the next weeks and months if we are not held accountable now. Not yesterday, not the week before. It would have been even better 5, 6, 7 months ago. But the longer the international community does nothing to curb this administration's actions and actually draw a line in the sand and then actually respond when it is crossed, this administration will continue. and they will continue to escalate. It is for this reason, during my administration, as your 48th president, I will criminally hold accountable every single member of this administration, every single politician, business leader, military leader, justice, judicial personnel involved in aiding, abetting, facilitating, and supporting this administration's extreme lawless behavior. It's going to be the American Nuremberg trials, and I don't know exactly where they're going to be held. We might have to hold them simultaneously in all 50 states. But there will be a reckoning for the atrocities committed now. Hopefully, I can get elected into Congress this year. Hopefully, the elections aren't interfered with enough for that to actually happen. And then hopefully 3 years from now, or sooner than that, preferably, there is a circumstance and situation in which I can follow through on that promise. Because not only is that a promise I have every intention and desire to keep, it is one that needs to be carried out with great expedience. The longer this administration operates, the longer this administration functions, the longer they act with impunity, the worse things will get, not just for Americans, but globally. So.
United Nation entities, including the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. The move would make it difficult for a future presidential administration to rejoin the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement.
Oh, so leaving is easy to do, evidently, but rejoining would be that much more difficult. So again, the ramifications aren't just in the United States, it's international. Stupid thing.
In a memo to senior administration officials, Trump also said the U.S. will quit participation in UN Women, which works for gender equality around the world, and the UN Population Fund, which is focused on family planning and the health of mothers and children in more than 150 countries. In Sudan, at least 13 people have been killed, including 8 children, after a drone strike hit a house in the city of El Obeid. That's according to the Sudan Doctors Network. The group says it's likely carried out by the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group. Meanwhile, several Sudanese women recounted harrowing stories of rape by the RSF to Al Jazeera. A senior doctor revealed 14 infants were raped. The UN describes...
Are you fucking serious? 14 infants in Sudan. Yeah, this administration is so pro-life and pro-family, yeah. And evidently, we're in a race to the bottom of who can commit the worst atrocities between America, Sudan, evidently, and Israel.
The situation in Sudan is the world's worst humanitarian crisis, as the civil war between the Sudanese army and the RSF has been raging for nearly 3 years. More than 11 million.
I mean, I don't know that the Israelis are assaulting babies. I think they're just murdering babies. But that is a freaking high bar at this point. The greatest humanitarian crisis in the world, when there is an active genocide going on and regime change occurring throughout the world, specifically right now with Venezuela, and America is devolving into Nazi-style fascism rapidly.
Million people have been displaced, and over 150,000 people have been killed. Israeli forces killed an 11-year-old Palestinian girl, Hamza Hossa, in northern Gaza on Thursday, and shot another child in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City.
There it is. I mean, we just said it. We know Israel's killing children and infants and civilians, but of course they're violating. I mean, of course, what justification is there ever to point a gun at a child in any circumstance? Any circumstance. You're a grown-ass adult. What reason do you have to fear so much for your safety, or even to lie about fearing for your safety, that you have to shoot a child?
On Wednesday, Israel bombed a residential home in the Al-Tufa neighborhood east of Gaza City, killing 3 people. The strikes occurred west of the Yellow Line, which confines the Palestinian population as part of the U.S. brokered ceasefire.
Which is currently being violated. Amy, why the fuck are you not saying these bombings and killings are in violation of the ceasefire? Like, that's, again, we love you, Amy. We really do. You are probably one of the best journalists we have on Earth right now. But you need to be more aggressive in your reporting. You really need to. Unless you're afraid for your own safety, in which case I will relent a little bit. But, like this...
The truce took effect on October 10th. Israel's killed more than 420 Palestinians and injured more than 1,100. This comes as Israel cleared the final hurdle to begin construction on the E1 settlement project near Jerusalem that would split the occupied West Bank in 2. The project has been under consideration for more than 2 decades, but had been put on hold due to U.S. pressure. Meanwhile, UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said Palestinians in the occupied West Bank face apartheid. It's the first time a UN Human Rights Chief has used the term.
Whether accessing water, school, rushing to hospital, visiting family or friends, harvesting olives, every aspect of life for Palestinians in the West Bank is controlled and curtailed by Israel's discriminatory laws, policies, and practices. Israel is violating international law, requiring states to prohibit and eradicate racial segregation and apartheid.
President Trump Wednesday.
On top of the fact that the United States is leaving the United Nations and all of the laundry list of organizations and groups that the United Nations is engaged in, such as the Human Rights Watch,
called for increasing U.S. military spending to $1.5 trillion in 2027, up from the 2026 military budget set at $901 billion.
Which is, again, when I was active duty from 2009 to 2015, the military budget peaked at around $730 billion, and even I thought was like, wow, I wish I could see any of that money, because us infantry, us enlisted folks aren't really getting much of a living anyway. Let alone the fact that the bases themselves need refurbished because they were built in the fucking 40s and 50s. So to more than double the budget of the military in 10 years is absolutely batshit insane, and is only going to serve one purpose. If we increase our budget, which we're already increasing our budget astronomically, but if we increase it to $1.5 trillion while leaving international treaties and organizations, while violating international law to begin with, violating our own laws to begin with, the fact that the military seems to be more than willing to execute unlawful orders and to commit war crimes on top of that, a $1.5 trillion budget is literally a clarion call. That is an air raid siren. That is the giant red flag that is saying we are going to start militarily engaging in conflict with anyone who gets in our way, who opposes us, or who has things that we want. You don't double the entire defense budget overnight because you want to show a strong posture, strength through, or peace through strength. That's not what a doubling of your military budget does. If you double your military budget, it's because you intend to use the fucking military. And the worst part is, none of those fuckers in the administration served their country. Oh, J.D. Vance was in the Marine Corps. I'm sorry. Every single one of these pieces of shit should be on the front lines, first and foremost, of every conflict that they try to initiate. And if they are unwilling to do that, then they should not be able to initiate a new conflict. Where still Congress has all but ceded its wartime powers. Its war powers that is given to Congress by the Constitution to avoid this very scenario in the first place. Because if the executive branch had the authority to wage war as they saw fit, without any checks or balances, we would have always been at war. Granted, we have pretty much been at war, but it would have been even worse, exponentially worse, throughout the past 2 centuries. And now, again, Congress is capitulating and ceding that power to the executive branch, the presidency, to unilaterally use the military however they see fit. And again, it begs the question, it remains to be seen if Trump is even going to honor the war powers resolution that did get passed in Congress. Chances are, according to the events, the very recent history of this administration, they're not going to honor it. They're not going to respect it whatsoever, especially if we're going to be doubling the budget. Before I forget, I just have to say that your hair looks really good. Good haircut, Gabriel. Done good. Yeah, in the middle of, declaring a massive international crisis and the onset of World War III, at least I'm going to look good. I'm going to look good during World War III and the collapse of the American empire and international stability. At least I got a sweet cut. All right.
In a post on Truth Social, President Trump said, quote, "This will allow us to build the dream military that we've long been entitled to, and more importantly, that will keep us safe and secure regardless of foe," unquote. This comes as President Trump has threatened military action in Greenland, Iran, Mexico, Cuba, and Colombia following the U.S. attack on Venezuela.
I mean, a $1.5 trillion budget overnight doesn't immediately create a doubling of forces and military equipment. What it could invite is the reintroduction of the draft to fill those positions. Or military members who have been out of service for a while being recalled. So I'm really not certain how this $1.5 trillion is going to get spent and what it's going to look like for our military forces. But considering the average amount of training that a new recruit, an enlisted recruit, receives is 2 months of basic training and 3 months of follow-on courses, it's going to be at least 6 months just to get one new group of enlisted personnel up to speed in their various career fields. And in some career fields, it takes much longer than that. In some, it takes a lot less than that. My point is, either A, World War III is kicking off in earnest this year, but closer to the end of this year, or we're going to use our current forces to do as much as we can till the international community tells us to fuck off, and then we spend the rest of the year building our forces, and then at the beginning of 2027, we kick off World War III. But make no mistake that we are 100% going to be using our military forces in the Caribbean and quite possibly against Greenland, Mexico, Canada even. I hope not Iran, but it might be Iran as well. So I don't know what it's going to look like necessarily. I don't know what the next steps actually are going to be. But the options are immediate military engagements, and immediate being within the next few days, weeks, or months, or a brief, and I mean brief by like the rest of this year, pause in military aggression so that $1.5 trillion can kick in, the enlistment and the training and the deployments can be established, and then the aggression goes full swing.
And the House Oversight Committee has secured subpoenas to seek testimony from billionaire Les Wexner and 2 executors of the estate of convicted serial sex offender Jeffrey.
The same Les Wexner whose name is on major medical facilities at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. That Les Wexner. That's the motherfucker.
Epstein. The subpoenas come as the Justice Department has released just over 12,000 documents from more than 2 million files related to Epstein, which amounts to less than 1% of its files.
So we have... Hold on. What? I did not hear that correctly. I did not... 2 million files is less than 1%, or 25,000 is less than 1%?
12,000 documents from more than 2 million files related to Epstein, which amounts to less than 1% of its files.
Oh, okay. All right. I did mishear that because I thought she was saying that the 2 million files is less than 1% of what they have. I was like, are you fucking serious? That would be the equivalent of there being over 200 million files. So, okay. 12,000 is less than 1% because 1% of 2 million is 20,000.
That's despite a law passed by Congress ordering the DOJ to release the vast majority of files by December 19th. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi claimed in a federal court filing Monday the DOJ's supposed efforts to protect the identities of Epstein survivors had slowed the process. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy.
Those are just some of the headlines. Some. A marginal amount of the headlines. I need a good haircut for the revolutionary posters a la Che. Imagine if Che's hair looked bad in all of those famous pics. You're right. I mean, so. Or would it be like. Everything in Columbus. Yeah, pretty much. Okay. So that was the headlines. Minneapolis.
Now, a protest against the shooting dead of a woman by a U.S. immigration agent in the city of Minneapolis has turned violent.
I mean, you just murdered somebody in cold blood. You should be fucking grateful that the entire city of Minneapolis didn't turn out for blood and ripped you motherfuckers limb from limb with massive impunity. Because quite frankly, that is what ICE deserves. And you know what? I'm gonna fucking say it. The fact that ICE murdered a civilian in cold blood is actively covering it up and trying to deny, right? And distract. And the fact that Minneapolis residents haven't risen up as an entire city. I don't know how big Minneapolis is, but let's call it several 100,000 people. 700,000 people should be converging upon ICE headquarters or wherever they're fucking at, and they should be literally torn limb from limb. The fact that that's not happening should be them thanking God, because that is what they deserve. And that would be a very reasonable response, because you know what happened in the United States of America around 250 years ago? The Redcoats murdered 6 Bostonian colonists. And that was one of the key events that kicked off the American Revolution. Okay? So, for context, we waged a war with England, the preeminent superpower of the world at the time, because 6 of our fellow American colonists were murdered by Redcoats. And now the Redcoat equivalent, the Gestapo equivalent, the Nazi equivalent, murdered civilians in cold blood, an American citizen. And yeah, we have an angry protest. We absolutely fucking do. The fact that they are still alive, they should be thanking their lucky stars. They should be kissing the ground, begging for forgiveness. But instead, Americans are still restrained, and this administration is going out of its way to protect, aid, and abet these pieces of shit. So.
Tensions flared when several demonstrators were detained by security forces monitoring the protest. On Wednesday, 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good was shot after officers surrounded her vehicle and ordered her to get out. The Department of Homeland Security says Good attempted to drive into them, and her shooting was an act of self-defense. Manu Rapalo joins me now on the phone from Minneapolis. He's just arriving now at the protest that, as you can see, is underway there. Manuel, I mean, given the very, very strong reaction to the shooting by both the governor and the mayor of Minneapolis, I mean, is it possible to sum up the sentiment there in the city right now?
Sure. I should explain as well why we're speaking on the phone and you are not seeing me on video right now. We were asked to relocate by Homeland Security, which is why you can't see us right now. But I am standing at the site of where protesters are right now facing off still with Homeland Security, with Immigration and Customs enforcement agents here. As you can see, as you can hear around me, there are people that are chanting. At the moment, things are very calm, but there is a sort of tension in the air. The sentiment here certainly is one of not welcoming these federal agents in the city. If there is a single demand that we could say that these protesters have right now, is for these federal agents to simply leave.
And Manny, is there any more information coming to light about the woman at the centre of all of this, Renee Nicole Good, the woman killed by an ICE agent, the woman...
Let's use the word murdered. Murdered. Let's put weight on the action. Murdered. Hell, we could even say martyred at this point, because evidently standing up to this administration is worthy of death. And I think martyring is what we call it when you die for a cause, is it not? I believe that is the proper terminology.
Hey there. It looks like you've got your ad blocker on. Ads help us keep Pandora free and prevent any play...
That was weird. Martyr. A person who is killed or made to suffer because of their religious or other beliefs. I was right. A person who displays or exaggerates their discomfort or distress in order to obtain sympathy or admiration. Ha! Which is funny because both definitions are being used in conjunction at the same time for the same event. The ICE agents are martyring themselves. The administration is martyring themselves. And the person who was killed, Renee Good, was martyred by the same administration trying to claim innocence. So. I think we will keep that on display.
Woman whose death has sparked all of this outrage.
Certainly. Last night, on Wednesday evening, we visited the site where the shooting took place, where Renee Nicole Good, 37-year-old American citizen, was shot and killed by ICE agents. There was a small vigil that had been held by members of the community who said that she was a good woman, a neighbor, a mother, a child of 4, and certainly someone who did not deserve to die. What we're hearing is just... Well, the sentiment has changed quite a bit from last night. It was a very quiet scene. People were showing remembrance, were paying respect, very different than what we're seeing today.
Did you just see the ICE agent pushing the protester who was trying to kick the tear gas canister back at them? Like, again, I know what use of force is. I know how and when to apply use of force. And they are dead ass in the fucking wrong. They should be retreating at this point. That is what should be happening. But instead, they're standing their ground and escalating the situation by using tear gas, a chemical weapon, against civilians, which is against international law. It's also... Well, actually, no, I guess it isn't against U.S. law. Otherwise, I guess we wouldn't be doing it. Is tear gas a chemical weapon under U.S. law? Well, a lot of these older articles allege, or not allege, but tie it into the Chemical Weapons Convention and warfare, so on and so forth, but I guess it isn't specifically in the United States. Point is, the actual point that I was trying to make is we're escalating by using things that are violating international law. We are already in the process of pulling out of those treaties and organizations and everything else. And I think we've already stopped utilizing the Geneva Conventions in the military. I believe I was not active, but I was in the reserves when we actually left the Geneva Convention. So, like, I don't know how else to say, like, we are not the good guys. We are not acting lawfully. We are acting like a rogue state the same way that we justify invading other countries. Except we're actually doing it. No propaganda required. We're fucking doing it to ourselves and everywhere else abroad. And these actions, these videos, these clips, these moments of history are what we have used in the past, either because we witnessed it or through the use of propaganda to justify invading other countries, and we are doing it here to ourselves.
It seems like that sentiment has once again, or rather turned into anger. You can certainly feel it in the air. There's a tension today, but when it comes to the person that was shot, people rejecting the idea or this notion that's being presented by the Department of Homeland Security that she was, the way that Kristi Noem, DHS Secretary, is characterizing her as a domestic terrorist. People are rejecting that notion.
Yeah, we can most certainly.
Also notice how people brought the American flag to the protest to say that this is not who we are. That's exactly the right thing to do. I get we've had this debate before that a lot of people view the American flag the same way we view the Israeli flag or the Confederate flag. But if we want to maintain our national identity and have something to unite us symbolically, we should rally around the flag, and we should not allow this modern day fascist bullshit to take that yet more from us, right? The fascist regime has already taken family values, patriotism, the American way, right? All of these things that should be uniting phrases are now conservative talking points. Why should we allow them to keep taking those talking points, and let alone holding on to them? Why should they be allowed to hold on to those talking points? Why should they have the right, since they're exercising the audacity, why should we allow them to say that they're the party of family values and life, liberty, and justice, and that they're the Patriot Party? Why are we allowing them to continue to get away with these blatant lies? Same thing with the flag. Why are we allowing them to define what our flag stands for? So kudos to the people bringing the flags here. Yeah, I know where you stand, Anna, which is okay. We don't always have to agree.
Here and indeed see the tension there in Minneapolis, Manuel. We're looking at live pictures of scuffles, as you say, members of the community involved in protesting what has transpired there in Minneapolis, going from a scene of shock to one clearly of anger right now, tear gas by the looks of it being used by enforcement agencies at that scene in Minneapolis. All right, Manuel Rapallo then.
Don't miss that.
So that's just the protests. And now we've got...
CBS News law enforcement...
now we have the talking heads speaking up about it, so let's see about this.
Contributor Rodney Harrison joins me now. Rodney, thank you for being here. And I'm going to read a little bit more about the policy because I want to ask you about this. I know we're going to be dissecting this over the days, weeks, and months to come. But according to DHS policy, the use of deadly force must be objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances. And the guidelines go on to say, officers may use deadly force only when necessary, when the law enforcement officer has a reasonable belief that the subject of such force poses an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to the law enforcement officer or another person.
And again, the officer stepped in front of the vehicle. So they put themselves in imminent danger or bodily harm, even with that extremely tenuous definition of justification.
Force cannot be used to stop someone who is fleeing, though it is authorized when an officer believes that someone who's trying to escape poses a serious threat to the officer or other.
Even better, she was fleeing the scene and they killed her anyway, and she's a fucking soccer mom at best. I mean, I don't know if she's an actual soccer mom, but like at best she's just a mother of a young child trying to get out of that situation. She is not a clear and present threat to anybody. So this just makes me even angrier, because we have the policy statement, we know what use of force is, we know when it isn't supposed to be used, and we have the president and the Secretary of Homeland Security and so on and so forth all disregarding that completely and just spreading misinformation and lies. It's disgusting. It's infuriating. It makes me extremely enraged. And honestly, I'm glad I'm not in Minneapolis. I'm very glad I'm not in Minneapolis, because I don't think I would be in any capacity fit to deal with ICE in that city.
Others, will this come down to the state of mind of the officer in question?
Absolutely. But the one thing that I think that I did not hear you say is, was there a reasonable alternative? And just based upon the video and the things that I've seen and through my 30 years in law enforcement experience, what I saw was there was a possible alternative for the officer. I am concerned about some of the tactics, the officer, the agent standing in front of the vehicle. But then it comes down to the officer, and did he feel that a judgment needed to be made regarding stopping what he might have deemed a deadly physical assault on himself. So there should be an external independent investigation from the Minnesota State Attorney's Office, but there are some concerns regarding the policies. There are some concerns regarding the tactics, and unfortunately, the most important thing, there needs to be a stronger level of sympathy for the Good family, for the life that was lost in this incident.
Again, the fact that the Supreme Court has ruled in numerous different ways that police have the authority to make judgments for themselves about what the law is and what is deemed necessary for protecting their life and safety, without clearly defining those with limitations like the military does, is exactly why we're having debates and why the administration is spreading misinformation instead of that piece of shit ICE agent being locked away for fucking murder in broad fucking daylight. I don't know if murder in the first degree is the number one, or if murder in the third degree is the worst one, but whatever the worst murder charge is what he needs to be charged with. Period. Dot. End of story. And the fact that he shot 3 rounds into this poor woman on top of that is that much more egregious. Like, say what you will about law enforcement in this country, the fact that we don't have clearly defined rules of engagement and what is or isn't a lawful order beyond if it comes from the officer's mouth it's lawful is absolutely batshit insane. Batshit insane. And under my administration, that is not going to be the case. I will 1000% throw the entire fucking book at any officer who violates the law, especially engaging in acts of murder in cold blood against civilians.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what you see is a lot of finger pointing. A lot of people are making accusations that this subject, Mrs. Good, was using the vehicle to ram the agent, but you don't hear any sympathy from the administration towards the family. So, you know, when you have incidents like this, you know, this is what stirs up protests that turn into violent protests that may even rise to another level. So one of the best things that needs to happen here is, one, be a little bit more transparent, a little bit more sympathetic, and then also take a look at if there is a need for accountability.
Let's talk about the accountability part. We heard Governor Walz say it feels now very difficult that we will get a fair outcome because people in positions of power, from the president to the vice president to Noam, have told you things that are verifiably false. We know the Minnesota Bureau of Investigation said the FBI is blocking the agency from accessing key information. How typical or atypical is that?
The FBI is, what's the word, interfering with the investigation? I mean, you can't make this shit up. The FBI is interfering. The Department of Homeland Security is lying on national television. The president and vice president are lying on national television. Like, how are we not? I honestly would love to have the debate on how we are not a fascist country right now. Like, show me the list of effective democratic processes that are functioning right now. Please. I would love to have them listed out because I do not see them. Well, the courts are still in effect and the Congress is still in there and they're voting and doing stuff. Sure. Where is the follow through? Right? A judge can rule all day long, but it doesn't fucking matter unless it is enforced. When you go to court and the judge sentences you to prison, you can't just go home and say, I'm not going to prison, like Trump did when they said you can't deploy the military on U.S. soil. He said, fuck you, I'm just going to go to a different state. And then did. Right? The reason why court rulings are effective is because they are enforced and they are enforceable. Meaning, if you commit a crime or a civil issue, right, like you owe shit tons of money for fraud or whatever, the reason why you have to pay up is because the police will arrest your fucking ass and throw you in prison. If you don't go to prison from the courtroom, you will be captured from wherever you are and then thrown into prison with extra charges. That's why the criminal justice system functions. That's how it functions. Otherwise, a ruling is just that, words. At best, a blemish on your permanent record. And that's only if people bother to look at it. So, where is the functioning democracy in the way that it is supposed to function? Yeah, sure. Poor people are getting fucked left, right, and center. See, that's how democracy works. Poor people are still going to prison for dumb shit. You're right. That is true. Where is democracy as the founders envisioned, as the Constitution was written to enforce? I'm not seeing it. All I'm seeing is a whole lot of complicit individuals who are going to be very unhappy during the U.S. Nuremberg trials. Now what? Fucking play.
Well, this is an uncommon occurrence. I can't recall an incident where you had a federal agent using deadly physical force in a situation like this. But I will say this, there definitely needs to be, and I shared this before, an independent investigation from the state attorney's office, somebody that could take a closer look at it. And once again is this, I don't want to sit here and challenge the officers as of yet.
Yes, you fucking should. You fucking coward. I don't give a damn if you're black. I don't give a damn if you had 30 years of experience. That 30 years of experience, and especially having lived in America as a black man throughout those 30 years, at the very least, right? You should 1000% be challenging that officer because you have the professional background and experience to challenge that officer. Granted, I was the security forces augmentee. I wasn't security forces in the Air Force, right? I was an augmentee. I did gate guard duty. I did flight line escort duty. I did vehicle checks and personnel checks. I was trained in how to do those things. And from that minuscule involvement in police force or police activities, I know unequivocally what these cops are doing, what these agents are doing is wrong, and I have no compunction about calling it out. And you should too. You should have no compunction. You have way more credentials than I do to back it up. So fucking use it.
He might have felt that his life was in danger and there was a need for him to use deadly physical force.
And that's the phrase that pisses me off. He felt that his life was in danger. Where is the law? The law needs to be clearly defined. Unless your life is objectively in danger, you cannot use deadly force. Period. But because the law is written so that these emotionally bereft, insecure cowards can make that decision on their own behalf and hope that if it even makes it to trial or to court, that the thin blue line protects them, which it does 50% of the time or more. Actually, it's closer to 90% of the time. Then you're basically giving a license to kill to these pieces of shit, which they are going to start exercising with greater and greater impunity.
A further investigation will reveal the truth, but there's still a lot more answers, questions that need to be answered going forward regarding the policy, the tactics, and could something else alternatively been done to avoid this incident from occurring the way it did.
At this point, do you think that whether it's the FBI or the State Attorney General's office doing this investigation, do you think that that will satisfy the public at large? You said that there needs to be an independent investigation, but there is so...
No. It's not. Even if this individual agent gets the entire book thrown at him, that's not going to be enough. ICE needs to be disbanded. Every single fucking member, every agent, every secretary, every admin, every tech support, every mechanic, every guard, every laborer, every welder, every single person in the Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement needs to be put on trial for crimes against humanity. And then, preferably, found guilty and sentenced accordingly. That would satisfy the public. Nothing less than that.
So much distrust right now from either side, depending on where you sit on the political aisle.
And it's going to get worse because what you're seeing is, once again, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of people on both sides blaming the other party. And
the fact that there's a both sides argument being made. Are you fucking insane? One side is the heavily funded and completely unregulated secret police force, and the other side is a civilian. Seems pretty clear cut who is in the wrong for the civilian dying.
And nobody's taking into consideration the family that lost a loved one. And if we could kind of get a little bit more of a better job of engagement.
Fucking cowardice. Yeah, let's listen to the Nazis speak.
This vehicle was used to hit this officer. It was used as a weapon, and the officers...
Nope, I am already crashing out. And just hearing her voice is making me want to punch my screen. And this is my only screen that's working. So, we're not going to do that.
Now to CBS News correspondent Ashur Qureshi, who is on the ground in Minneapolis in the wake of this ICE shooting. So, my friend, what stands out to you from what you've now heard from Governor Tim Walz as it squares with Kristi Noem, Department of Homeland Security?
Is exactly that it does not square, and there is a vast divide between the perspectives we're hearing from federal officials and state and local officials. And people online, people here on the ground are talking about this video and what they're seeing in this video. And what I can tell you, Reed, is that it is a very different perspective here on the ground. We talked about, impeding the way, the thoroughfare for ICE agents. I can tell you right now, by being here, the perspective I have now is completely different than what I saw on the video. This is not a small street. This is a boulevard. It is large. It is about 4 lanes. You're talking about 2 lanes of driving and a full parking lane on both sides. So to block this entire road, you'd have to be turned sideways, and you're looking at about 2.5 to 3 car lengths at this point. So the idea that she could have potentially blocked this entire boulevard, people here say, doesn't square with the reality on the ground. And that's what we keep hearing from Governor Tim Walz, and we're hearing the opposite from Kristi Noem.
And you're there where the people are, in that neighborhood where violence played out. They've now had 24.
And look in the background. The fucking stock market is going up. Despite a civilian being murdered, despite a country being invaded, and their president being kidnapped and trafficked to another country. The stock market is going up. Which should be another reason to tell you that the stock market does not reflect anything within the basis of reality, and rather rich people feelings.
4 hours since that, the white-hot glare of the international media looking at their neighborhood. What are they saying, especially in the wake of the governor there saying don't give them what they're asking for by way of the federal government, and maybe even adding more troops?
Right. Well, clearly this is crystallizing opposition to the ICE, the immigration actions that have been happening here in Minneapolis already. I'll just give you a sense. I want to step out of the way so you can see this. What's happening behind me is these are barricades. These have not been set up by law enforcement. These have been set up by the people here. You can see they're gathering in the distance. This crowd has been growing from morning, and it has been extremely peaceful. They have been very calm. They are lining up around a memorial that has been set up for Renee Good, flowers, and stuffed animals, all kinds
American
of
flag.
Trinkets have been dropped off here. But this area, they wanted to close off for pedestrians so that people could actually come and visit and pay tribute to this woman whose life was taken yesterday. Reed.
The story continues. Usher Qureshi.
You know what's kind of funny about that, Anna? I was thinking the same thing. I was like, he has a very symmetrical face. Like, good for him. Like, what a man. He's got that going for him. So that's domestic news. For now. Colombia.
After capturing and detaining the Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, President Trump's been musing on who's next, and his gaze turned almost immediately onto the Colombian president, Gustavo Petro.
He's making cocaine, they're sending it into the United States.
Operation. On Tuesday, the response from the Colombian foreign minister.
He's the legitimate president, the head of the security forces and of the state, and therefore any move against our president is an offence to our country.
So why is Trump talking about Gustavo Petro?
He's on the left, he's sparred with Trump before, and crucially, he's in what Trump regards as the United States' rightful zone of interest, Latin America.
I don't get the United States' rightful zone of interest. By what right do we have the authority to claim interest in any zone on any square inch of this planet that isn't already the borders or territories of the United States of America? Look at Granny. Were you talking about the defense or secretary of the foreign, I forget what they called her, but basically Marco Rubio of Colombia? Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, Abuela's pretty feisty out there, for sure.
Trump's repeated.
I guess we're sharing a brain cell right now because I, again, had the same thought.
Accused him of trafficking cocaine to the US with no evidence.
Since Maduro's capture, Colombia has deployed 30,000 troops to its border here with Venezuela. They're here to stop any violence from armed cross-border groups who are unhappy with the US attack and to watch out for any influx of Venezuelan refugees. But they're also on alert for any US attack.
The foreign minister...
Okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. Colombia is deploying 30,000 troops, but not into Venezuela. Okay. That makes a bit more sense.
was clear on what happens then.
The defence of our sovereignty is paramount. For that purpose, we have a very capable, very well-prepared army, an army under the command of the head of state, President Gustavo Petro, who would have to defend our population should such a situation arise.
It's not just Colombia that Trump's been casually threatening. He's mentioned Mexico. He wants to go in after drug cartels. His administration's looking at long-term enemy Cuba too.
Yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit.
Say yeah. And we have Marquito talking shit on the world stage as well. What a fucking disgrace. Like, this is the most embarrassing and infuriating administration of American history, and honestly the most traitorous administration of American history, which is nuts. Because that American history includes the likes of Andrew Jackson, Calvin Coolidge, Richard fucking Nixon, and Ronald goddamn Reagan. We can also argue Bush Jr. and Bush Sr. for that matter.
This is a president who's come to believe in the US and its political and economic objectives being dominant in Latin America.
But Colombia isn't Venezuela. It's got a democratic government and there aren't widespread doubts about...
So even Al Jazeera is shitting on Venezuela. Outstanding.
...its president's legitimacy. Any attack here would be much harder to justify. Given recent events, that doesn't mean that the government here isn't taking it seriously. John Holman, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's see what they specifically
A night
talk about.
patrol near the border between Colombia and Venezuela. Some 30,000 troops have been deployed to Colombia's eastern border, stretching across more than 2,000 kilometers of shared frontier. Their mission: prepare for potential attacks by armed cross-border groups involved in drug trafficking, including the ELN rebels.
In a statement, the ELN promised resistance against what they call imperial plans against Venezuela and its people.
But the deployment also pushes back against US President Donald Trump's accusations that Colombia is failing to stop drugs crossing the border and warnings that could become Washington's next target.
It has always been our concern, our responsibility, to confront these organized armed groups. So this is nothing new or unfamiliar to us, and our actions will always be aimed at neutralizing these groups.
Yeah, well, when the greatest armed terrorist group apparently on Earth, America, which is now a rogue state, or quickly becoming one, has the largest, most well-funded, and arguably best-trained military on Earth, yeah, you're gonna have to take that seriously, and good luck. But here's the thing, too. America sucks at fighting guerrillas. Now, what do I mean by that? We lost the Vietnam War, and we lost the global war on terror. We cannot fight groups that hide. We just don't do a good job of that. For whatever reason, that's not what we can do. We can conquer cities. We can decimate infrastructures. We can annihilate bases and ports and airports as well. We are good at destroying military targets, but trying to go after guerrillas and resistance fighters and rebels and this, that, and the other, we are not good at in any sense of the word. So, a drawn-out conflict with Venezuela or Colombia could actually turn in their favor. Because, yes, America might very well be able to invade and conquer Caracas. And I don't know the capital of Colombia off the top of my head. But say we invade and capture both of those cities. Well, capturing the city is way different than controlling the city. And if these soldiers, one, and the civilians who then turn rebel, two, choose to resist the American occupation, it is going to be very effective. Because we have never once succeeded in that type of warfare. Never. Not once in our history. We are only good at destroying. We use an axe when a scalpel is needed. Yeah, Bogota. Okay, so Bogota, Colombia. So if we invade Bogota and Colombia, it's not going to go well for us. Not if we try to actually stay there for any length of time. We can destroy those cities. We can wipe them off the face of the earth. But then we ruin any sort of justification or even a foothold in the country to control it. So either which way, it's not going to end well for the United States.
And the crisis is not only about security. Since Venezuela's economic collapse, millions have crossed into Colombia seeking food, work, and medical care.
Many of the patients here are Venezuelans who cross the border in search of medical assistance, and they're overwhelming the already limited resources of this public hospital in Colombia. There's a lack of space, among other issues. As you can see, hospitals' beds are set up in corridors and waiting.
Remember when the genocide in Palestine was just getting kicked off, and these were the images we saw coming out of the Gaza Strip? And now there's no hospitals in the Gaza Strip? That's the kind of warfare Israel wages, and the kind of warfare that America is now poised to wage with impunity.
One of my kidneys is damaged, so I've come to see if they can treat me here, because back in Venezuela...
And it is worth pointing out that U.S. sanctions included medicine and medical equipment. So, yes, that is 100% worth mentioning.
Venezuela, there are no medicines. There's nothing. And if you go there, they just let you die.
Hospital manager and Dr. Mario Galvis says authorities have promised more funding, but warns the system is under extreme strain.
Today we are operating at more than 330% above capacity in adult care and at 144% above capacity in pediatrics. 30% of all care provided by our hospital is for Venezuelan migrants. In maternity, roughly half of the patients are Venezuelan. We don't turn anyone back, but it is hard.
It's also worth mentioning that invading another country and destabilizing its economy and its infrastructure results in its population fleeing that country, which then causes migration/refugee crises to neighboring countries, which, if the attacking force has designs on attacking those countries in the future, is in fact the first act of war against them. Why, do you ask? Well, as we are seeing, Colombia, at least on the border, is being overwhelmed by the Venezuelan influx. Meaning their medical systems, their economy, their infrastructure, their housing, their everything is going to be slowly overwhelmed or degraded or deteriorated over time due to being at significantly higher than normal capacity because of what America did to Venezuela. Now, on our little map, right, it borders the state of Roraima, Colombia, Guinea. It is close to Suriname, and Brazil. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. State of Roraima, part of Brazil. So Venezuela, right, is... Oh. So Venezuela borders Colombia, obviously. Guinea, right? And then Brazil, which takes up a major portion of the South American continent. So Brazil's not likely to be overwhelmed, right? And this looks like a forested, protected area. I think that's what these red lines mean. I don't know, actually, what these red lines mean. But there are these border cities where Venezuelans are likely to also start fleeing into. Make no mistake, if the United States is going to occupy Venezuela... Here, let's hide that for a second. If the United States is going to occupy Venezuela, right, and they have already threatened Cuba and Mexico, all of this right here is next. And all of this is next. And Puerto Rico is apparently already an American territory, right? So, which then makes Ecuador, Peru, Guinea, Suriname, and French Guiana next. Followed by Brazil, Bolivia, and then all the way down to the southern tip. At that point, America would control the entire Western Hemisphere. And one of the best ways to get your foothold into the Western Hemisphere and the major South American continent, can I just zoom out so it's just covering this, would in fact be conquering the northern tip, Venezuela and Colombia. Once you have those two footholds, everything else is an option. Everything else becomes available. Now, in America, we already have we already have ports along the coast of California and Washington, right? So, and Oregon, right? So we already have access to the Pacific. If we also then start attacking Mexico, which we share a border with, it is no difficulty whatsoever to take out this entire Caribbean region. This entire Caribbean region falls due to the singular USS Roosevelt, I think, is what's currently deployed in here. That aircraft carrier has 90 F-35s on it. The combined Air Force, I think we figured out, is equivalent to just one aircraft carrier worth. That aircraft carrier worth, right? One aircraft carrier can destroy all these small countries easily. And once we've consolidated the Caribbean nations, the northern tip of South America, and potentially Mexico, which I don't think we would be able to do that quickly, because although we do have military all across this southern border, we've never fought a continental war in the past century, right? The last time we fought a war on this continent was to conquer Mexico, and then instead of conquering Mexico, we gave up Mexico because we were racist back then, more so than we are now, if that's possible, and didn't want all the brown people being a part of the United States. So, if we're going to be rehashing the Mexican-American War, there's a very good chance that we win, but at what cost, right? And then you have the fact that the Pacific theater, there is nothing in the way. Russia can come over, China can come over, the Koreas could come over, Japan could come over. Not that Japan's currently an enemy, but then again, we're leaving all of the United Nations stuff, so you see what I'm saying? Like, the Pacific Ocean is a direct shot to the United States. Yeah, there's like 4,000 miles between it, but it's a direct shot. And if we start invading Mexico and Greenland and South America, we are going to invite ourselves to a healthy amount of conflict. And this invasion and the subsequent refugee crisis that Colombia is facing is the first attack against Colombians. So the actual military strike against Colombia isn't going to be that far behind.
High-profile briefing here in the halls of Congress with Marco Rubio leading the delegation from the administration. Also included Pete Hegseth, who's of course the Defense Secretary and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This was to inform 100 senators behind closed doors about the military operation in Venezuela, how they captured Nicolas Maduro, and of course plans for the future.
By the way, the United States Senate got briefed after U.S. oil companies got briefed on this attack. The U.S. says people are fleeing Venezuela because of how awful Maduro is. Communism kills. They never mention that it is U.S. sanctions killing people. Or, America kidnapping their president and murdering people in their city. Or that. I have been reading Don't Forget About Us by Mansour Adyafi, and after listening to what happened to him has filled me with anger. Right. Yeah. I mean, There has not been a single moment of this first week of the new year that has not been rage-inducing. That is absolutely true. And then, of course, the history that led up to it is just as infuriating.
Such an important question for so many senators. Now, afterwards, we spoke to John Kennedy, the Republican senator from Louisiana. He says he was very impressed by what he heard.
It was, in my 10 years here, it was probably the best briefing I've attended. It was very specific.
Why the fuck would you talk to a boot-licking Senate Republican to get your feedback on this briefing? Are you fucking kidding me? You know, this is what pisses me off about Al Jazeera, too. You can trust them if it's about the Middle East, but if it has to do with Latin America...
It was very thorough. They told us things that were truly classified. Oftentimes they don't.
For many Democratic senators, there's still questions to be answered. How long will this operation last? How much will it cost? Will American troops actually be needed on the ground in Venezuela? The leader of the Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, says these questions need answers.
This is fraught with peril. The American people, the public, not just in a classified room, the American people need answers.
While the split is really along party lines, with Republicans supporting everything that Donald Trump has done and Democrats asking many questions, they came to the Hill with news that the US had seized the Russian tanker in the Atlantic. That led John Fetterman, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, to praise what Donald Trump has done. And
John Fetterman is as much a Democrat as fucking Tom Cotton is a Democrat. Are you fucking serious right now? The fact that John Fetterman hasn't officially labeled himself as a Republican is, I mean, barely a talking point at this rate. Like, be for real right now.
And says this teaches the Russians a lesson.
What?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Calling on the Russians. You know, on the dirty Russians. Absolutely. Finally standing up and pushing back on Russia.
Oh my God. Is this the Cold War all over again? Is John Fetterman even old enough to be a Cold War baby? Like, to be that brainwashed by the Cold War and the scary Russians? Like, this is fucking stupid as shit. Also, that oil tanker was fucking empty.
You know, the Trump administration is hoping these briefings will get it even more support on Capitol Hill. That's important because the next thing up here is a vote on the War Powers Resolution, which essentially says that Donald Trump can't take further action in...
As it turns out, the War Powers Resolution passed. And again, as I mentioned before, let's see if he fucking listens, because I doubt it. I fucking doubt it.
Or on Venezuela without congressional approval, just like it says in the Constitution.
Which hasn't
Alan Fisher,
been
Al Jazeera.
regarded since January 21st, 2025.
The United States has dramatically seized 2 more sanctioned oil tankers in a move that has been...
Okay, if America sanctions something, that doesn't give them legal justification to do that, because any country can sanction anything. That's what a sanction is. Don't do that, we don't like it. But the rest of the world doesn't have to fucking agree. It's not an international agreement, it's one country sanctioning another. China has sanctioned the United States. And honestly, I'm kind of curious to see if they're going to try and seize one of our ships or cargo or freight or whatever else, because what's stopping them?
Condemned by Russia. One of the tankers was Russian flagged and had been pursued for more than 2 weeks across the Atlantic by the US. The Ministry of Defence has confirmed that British forces were involved in the operation to seize the Marinera in a support role. Washington says the tanker is part of a so-called shadow fleet that carries oil for countries like Venezuela, Russia and Iran in violation of US sanctions. Our defense...
Again, A U.S. sanction is just America throwing out into the void that they don't like something. It is not international law or authority.
Correspondent Jonathan Beale has been following the story.
These are the images from the US Coast Guard in hot pursuit of the Russian-flagged tanker in the North Atlantic, just before US Special Forces boarded and seized the vessel. And this the view from the tanker trying to evade capture, provided to a Russian state broadcaster. RT also later released stills of US Special Forces helicopters arriving to carry out the raid.
The vessel this morning was seized in the North Atlantic pursuant to a warrant issued by a U.S. federal court after being tracked. And this was a Venezuelan shadow fleet vessel that has transported sanctioned oil.
So is the BBC British broadcasting channel, or is it American propaganda? Because I can't see any fucking difference. Literally, verbatim, repeating the words of this administration. Fuck the BBC. Oh, we do have videos on Gaza. Let's go ahead and cover that, because just because we're committing
These people are not
atrocities throughout the world and at home doesn't change the fact
for
that
treatment.
The genocide in Gaza is continuing.
They are waiting to see if treatment still exists. In Gaza, there are no health services left to treat cancer anymore. Thousands of cancer patients are being left without treatment, medication, or access to specialized care. Doctors say the number of cancer-related deaths has tripled since the start of the war, and patients are now dying from conditions that used to be treatable.
The rate of cancer-related deaths have risen due to several factors, most critically the lack of treatment, delays in diagnosis and restrictions on medical evacuation for chemotherapy, which is no longer available in Gaza.
So, the death toll that isn't being talked about is the medical death toll of Gazans during this ceasefire, which exists, this death toll, the ceasefire, and their conditions without a healthcare system, because Israel has been committing genocide against them for 2 fucking years. And we said that this was going to happen. We said that once the civilians were allowed to return to their destroyed homes, that they would still start dying due to exposure, lack of access to medicine, lack of access to food and clean water. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's happening, on top of the fact that Israel is murdering them with impunity, just at a much smaller scale. What didn't the BBC do now? These lying misinformation fucksticks.
Stop. Hani Naim is one of those who are affected. Hani had been approved to receive treatment for cancer abroad, but has since been prevented from leaving Gaza under Israeli restrictions.
I've been living with cancer for 6 years. I used to receive treatment in West Bank and Jerusalem. Today, I cannot access any treatment at all. I need radiotherapy and it's no longer exists in Gaza.
The Turkish Friendship Hospital was once the sole center of oncology services for thousands of cancer patients. Today, it resembles a ghost hospital after being turned into a military site during the war.
Can you, honestly, the amount of wordsmithing and mental gymnastics that they just used to highlight how a hospital was destroyed and used as a forward operating base, clearly in violation of international law and the Geneva Conventions, and it was then tagged by Israel as a, hey, fuck you, we're here. I don't know what that says. I do not know Hebrew in the slightest, but what I can say is that the context is, fuck you, Palestinians, we're here, and you're not. And even Al Jazeera can't unilaterally condemn Israeli actions for violating international law against a hospital.
Israeli forces blew it up, leaving patients to fend for themselves. Without hospitals, without referrals for treatment, and without medicine, cancer becomes a death sentence. And every delay, every blockade, every missing medicine can lead to more lives being lost. Thousands of cancer patients in Gaza are facing a silent killer. No medicine, no treatment facilities, and blocked access abroad. This is a humanitarian emergency unfolds behind the front line, one that doctors describe as one of the most forms of death happening in the territory these days. Tariq Abu Azzoum, Al Jazeera, from Al Mughraqa area, Palestine.
Don't miss out and get the full picture.
Hannah Mariang lives in this tiny shelter. It looks more like a dark cave. She's keeping herself busy. She seems to be about to prepare a meal, but there's nothing to cook. Her son isn't asleep in the proper sense. He's bedridden with hunger. She says she's received only 2 small portions of rations since June.
They brought us here, but they don't give us anything. No matter where we go, we return empty-handed.
Al-Jam'iyya hosts 31,000 South Sudanese refugees. It's the latest camp to be constructed. 9 others dot the area around it. Most of them date back more than 10 years. Some of the refugees have been here before the secession of South Sudan in 2011. Others came fleeing tribal violence that shook the new state in recent years. But the latest wave arrived from Khartoum in the last few months. Sudanese authorities began a campaign to clear the capital from foreign immigrants and move them to other locations in June. They cite inadequate living conditions in the destroyed capital.
Year after year, war after war, displacement after displacement. Such is the rhythm of life of these people, some of whom tell us they have been crossing back and forth between Sudan and South Sudan for more than 10 years. Now they're here in the middle of nowhere, all but forgotten by the outside world, unable to secure food or even the semblance.
The thing that is often not even... Well, Sudan is hardly ever discussed anyway. Let's be perfectly upfront on that, right? But what isn't discussed on top of that is the fact that these refugee camps have been around for a fucking decade. And that this civil war that is committing atrocities that we will not repeat is just evidence of how fucked it has been there for how long it has been fucked. And it continues on. And if you look, there have only been 879 views because even amongst those 17 million subscribers who subscribe to Al Jazeera, who pay attention to Israel and Palestine, who pay attention to other global affairs, nobody can be bothered about what's happening in Sudan. And it is certainly a comparable tragedy and atrocity, perhaps even exceeding the genocide in Palestine to some degree or another. In some cases, let me put it that way. Genocide is not worse than civil war. Civil war is not worse than genocide. Let me rephrase. But the atrocities that are coming out of this civil war definitely compete with malevolence, with genocide.
Aleppo has endured years of war, but for residents of the city's Kurdish majority districts, the sound of gunfire is once again shaping daily life. Since Tuesday, fighting has intensified around the neighborhoods of Sheikh Makhsoud and Ashrafiyah, areas long controlled by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. The clashes have pushed thousands of families to flee on foot, carrying what they can, unsure when or if they will return.
We have been suffering for 14 years. I wish God would take our souls so we can rest in peace.
Government forces say they are reasserting.
Hey, by the way, this has been going on for 14 years, huh? out of curiosity, Syrian civil war has been going for 14 years, since March 2011. Again, ever since the fall of Assad during the Arab Spring. The same Arab Spring that occurred during whose administration? Where the CIA was involved with under whose leadership and direction? Interesting. Interesting how we can directly paint the civil war of today and the destabilization of Syria of today and lay that firmly in the lap of Obama. And of course, if we go to Wikipedia, you know, they'll say that armed conflict, Ba'athist regime, al-Assad, pro-democracy rallies, fall of the regime, what was it? Popular discontent led to large-scale protests. Many were violently suppressed. So they're not even mentioning why these protests happened, right? Because Assad was allegedly gassing his own people and so on and so forth, right? And then the revolution turned into insurgency because that's the problem. If you have violent revolution without actual leadership, it devolves into chaos, with basically warlords vying for power. But yeah, there's no talking about so I guess the final. Oh, here we go. Background. There we go. Oh, imagine that. The Socialist Party came to power in a coup d'etat in 1963. A second coup removed him, replacing it with a hard left, pro-Soviet regime led by Salah Jadid, causing a split between the Syrian branch of Ba'ath, which supported Jadid, and the Iraqi branch, which remained loyal to Aflaq. Okay. So, because it was communist and socialist, okay. Then this marked the beginning of the domination of personality cult centered around the Assad family. Okay, so it was perhaps a military dictatorship. And that's where it was mentioned that they became central figure of state propaganda and so on and so forth. 1973, 1973, 1982, 1980s. And then Hafez al-Assad died in 2000. His son succeeded him as the president, which, you know, that doesn't sound like how elections should happen, but okay. Bashar al-Assad claimed that no moderate opposition to his government exists and that all opposition forces are Islamists. Focusing on destroying a secular leadership, his view was that terrorist groups operating in Syria are linked to the agendas of foreign countries. And there's the rub. There's the rub right here. Sorry. I was trying to get to the point and so that you could all see it. This is probably why he was killed. He moved terrorist groups out of Syria, which were, of course, CIA-backed fronts. And then, of course, the human rights that was blamed from 1963 to 2011. Anywho.
Control and accused the SDF of operating outside.
Right. The opposition was ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Right. And remember when 14 million people were protesting to oust the president of Egypt, but Hillary liked him, so they tried to force Egyptians to keep him? Yeah, no, that's exactly the point.
State authority, despite agreeing to merge with the government last March. The SDF, meanwhile, says it is defending areas it has administered for years. warning against what it calls forced reintegration without political guarantees. That political deadlock is now playing out on Aleppo's streets. On Wednesday, the government announced that any SDF element in Ashrafia and Sheikh Mahsoud is a legitimate military target and urged residents to distance themselves from the SDF and move to safe areas.
We want this conflict to end. Let there be pain one time, not constantly. There is shelling from both sides. We hide in a safe house, and when the sun rises, we have to leave.
So, what's happening in Syria 14 years later could be very well happening in the United States. And what's nuts is the movie that just came out, I think it was actually called Civil War, which is when America fought the Second Civil War, but somehow California and Texas were aligned against the rest of the country or whatever. Like, maybe it's not going to play out that way, but eventually, with enough of these illegal occupations of our city and invasions by ICE into our communities, there will become a critical mass where people decide to exercise their Second Amendment. And then it's going to turn into, do you stand against tyranny and lay the blame of tyranny against this administration or not? And honestly, I'm pretty certain that the divide, even amongst military members and government agents, are going to be pretty well split down the middle.
Workers warn that renewed displacement inside Aleppo could strain already fragile services in a city still struggling to recover from years of destruction. For civilians here, the message is painfully familiar. Peace in Syria remains fragile and far from guaranteed. Aleppo.
Okay. Why is the United States so broken? Just a week into 226, and it's like devil's arithmetic extinguishing the flames of other lives that are chosen to be taken away. We've been asking that question for years, through the Biden administration to the present. And it's obviously gotten worse since Trump's second term. What a cute baby. Yeah, well. They like to say here that the Second Amendment is a God-given right, and then they complain about Maduro having machine guns. Or the fact that the Second Amendment is a God-given right, and then when facing goose-stepping tyrannical Nazis murdering people, civilians, in their vehicle on U.S. soil, they, instead of getting outraged, applaud them. So the Second Amendment has failed as well because the intent has been lost and been co-opted by the very tyrants that it was meant to defend against. They charged him with having weapons. The guy is literally the president. What president doesn't have guns? No, but the original excuse was that he was a narco-terrorist. So where are those charges? Okay. More fun international news.
A rare glimpse inside a European drone factory here near the Bulgarian capital Sofia, where so-called kamikaze drones are being produced, and they could potentially become part of this drone wall from the Baltics to the Black Sea.
This is a drone with an electric battery which can fly up to 100 to 150 kilometers and can take bombs from 2 to 7 kilograms.
While Ukraine and Russia have rapidly developed a new way of warfare using drones, European countries are struggling to respond. In recent months, drones have been spotted near airports and military bases around the continent, activating fighter jets in response and causing widespread flight disruptions and panic. European leaders blamed Russia, but Moscow denies any involvement. Countries, especially in the eastern part of Europe, are working on the initiative, installing and integrating systems to detect and jam drones and attack them if needed. Bulgaria's geographical position at the Black Sea is crucial.
The military in Europe is pretty late in understanding what's going on. They are not ready for this modern warfare, especially here in Bulgaria, where the Ministry of Defense only now understands things have changed. A unified system in Europe is therefore a near utopia.
Autonomous warfare. Warfare fought behind computer screens instead of face-to-face, rifle to rifle. World War III might not actually end up being nuclear. Might. Keyword might. I mean, it's closer to a coin toss than anything. But the autonomous element of warfare is what truly should terrify everyone, because it's bad enough that we're killing each other in close quarters with rifles, or shooting each other long range with howitzers or missile systems, or from airstrikes, right? But if there isn't even a human cost involved from the military side of things, and it's just civilian destruction with impunity, I don't know how to use this phrase, the ethics, the morality, the empathy of war goes completely out the window. If you can completely remove yourself as a living, breathing human from the consequences of war, you are then emboldened to act with greater and greater violence and aggression and destruction, with less and less concern over collateral damage, as we are seeing by ICE agents who feel more and more emboldened to murder people in broad fucking daylight. If war escalates to that same level, we won't need nuclear weapons, because there will be so much widespread destruction of infrastructure and institutions that a nuclear blast would actually be a welcome alternative. So no, this drone wall and the rise of autonomous warfare is an extremely dangerous and terrifying prospect for the world at large.
Anti-drone systems like this one can detect up to 10 commercial drones at once and jam them. But European airports are reluctant to install them out of fear they'll disrupt flight systems. Also legally, countries are still finding out who will be responsible for dealing with unknown commercial drones. Not only is Europe trying to catch up while internally being divided on the drone wall, leaders are also unclear on how the EU and NATO will work together and how a military confrontation with Russia can be avoided if armed drones accidentally cross borders. Competition between drone-producing countries is also expected to complicate the plan for a drone wall. Germany recently released this model.
We see small companies in the Baltic states and Bulgaria producing quality drones and anti-drone system, and this poses a threat to big companies in Western Europe.
The plan is to have a drone wall up and running in 2 years' time. By then, warfare may look a lot different again.
Yeah, in 2 years' time, Russia could already be drone carpet bombing the entire Eastern Front, which is not something that we really need in the geopolitical conflicts of the modern times. What do I think about Russia? Or I'll give you a nice direct answer here. My stance on Russia is that it is not the Cold fucking War. Russia is a country and a sovereign state with a head of state who is a creature of the Cold War. He was head of the fucking KGB and has been in power in Russia for what, 20, 30 years now? As far as I am concerned, Russia is no different than China, Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, or any other country on planet Earth. They are a country with their own agendas and their own goals. They're no longer communist. They haven't been for quite some time. So even if that was a concern, that's no longer a concern in the present. All we need to do is find a way to normalize diplomatic relations with Russia without shitting in each other's Wheaties and getting into pissing contests every other Tuesday. If instead we were rivals, like we were during the space race, or for technological advancement, or economic advancement, or trade advancement, or cultural exchange, that would be mutually beneficial because we would be bringing out the best in each other. Instead, we are rivals of war and conflict, which brings out the worst of each other. We want to constantly get leverage over Russia and demonize Russia and make them the world enemy. Russia is not the enemy of anybody other than American politicians who grew up during the Cold War and haven't gotten the fuck over it. So I do not have anything bad to say about Russia as a country or as a people. Their government is a shitty administration that is trying to bring back the glory days of the USSR, and America is no worse or better because all of our politicians are trying to reignite the glory days of the post-World War II Reconstruction era without any of the social justice achievements we've accomplished. Yeah. There are way too many stupid people who think Russia is still communist. So the same can be said about Trump. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. I have something... I feel like I have a fuzz or something on my tongue. Can you guys tell? All right. Political gridlock.
Museums shuttered, government offices closed down, hundreds of thousands of federal workers were furloughed. Airports were in near chaos as Transport Security Administration officials and air traffic controllers had to work without pay, significant numbers deciding not to work at all. The longest shutdown in U.S. history. For 43 days, each side of Congress continued to blame the other, and Americans witnessed the complete meltdown of a largely two-party political system. The previous longest shutdown occurred during President Trump's first term, and the seeds of visceral political division began to germinate at a meeting with Democrat leaders in the White House.
We can agree on is we shouldn't shut down the government over a dispute, and you want to shut it down. You keep talking about it.
The last time, Chuck, you shut it down.
No.
And then you opened it up very quickly. And
20 times.
I don't want to do what you did.
Donald Trump's win in 2024 did nothing to heal the divisions and arguably made them greater. Back in power, President Trump went on the offensive.
What's better?
In some ways, he's a consequence of polarization as well as an accelerant of polarization.
The concept?
Correct. And we don't talk about that enough. America is more polarized now than at any other point in time in history, and that includes the fact that we fought a civil war. In that polarization, the fact that it is preventing an actual open armed conflict of civil war is due to the sheer amount of propaganda and misinformation and arguably programming that has been instilled in generations of Americans for the past century, since at least the end of World War II. They have been perfecting the propaganda machine and manufacturing consent for Americans and slowly trickling in the polarization until what we have today. And that is fundamentally why we don't have any sort of opposition organizations, because the polarization also causes us not to trust one another. And if you're part of the dissent or part of the opposition, you have been ingrained in your head to live in fear and to not even risk reaching out to those that have similar values or views, because you will be crushed. Because this country has made it a point to publicly crush and humiliate those who speak out against American imperialism. So, the polarization of our country is one of the deciding factors as to Trump's success in office this time. And it is success. It's horrible. It's detrimental, but it is successful in that this is the first administration that has successfully undermined the Constitution when many others have tried in the past. So,
Of us versus them diluted the traditional political divide between parties.
I ran for Congress in 2020.
Republicans viewed as being too critical have also been the target of President Trump's attacks.
Marjorie Trader Brown,
who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol.
Liz Cheney became the object of extreme vitriol after breaking ranks and voting to indict President Trump following the events of January 6. Her father and former Republican Vice President Dick Cheney also became a marked man even after his death. The original motto of the United States is found on the Great Seal kept in the care of the State Department. It reads, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. The words are also on the back of a $1 note, a daily reminder to Americans of a pledge to unity that is either forgotten or denied.
Well, it's funny that he says that because where's E pluribus unum on there? Where do you see it? Because instead, it's in God we trust. And I don't have a dollar bill handy to look at, but even though they're doing a close-up on it, I'm not seeing it. And I'm looking for it.
Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, at the State Department.
Oh. Wait. Nope, that's Anuit Corporatus. Where is it? Is it this right here? Is that the E pluribus unum? Because I don't see it. That's crazy. It's on the back of the dollar bill. Shows the closest up of a close-up dollar bill that you could possibly get, and you still can't see it.
Department.
Don't miss.
That's fucking insane. Okay. Can you give me a whole fucking picture? Like, what the hell? So, Novus Ordo Seclorum? Oh. Okay. Alright. E pluribus... Oh, really? E pluribus unum is in the eagle.
Right. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, at the State Department.
Which, apparently this camera doesn't have the fidelity to even see that, which is actually kind of funny. Alright. Why doesn't he take the blame? He said he wouldn't lose supporters. Liz Cheney. These fools want her to run in 2028. It's their funeral. In Red Overlords America, it's me pluribus unum. Which is funny because that's actually correct Latin. I am the many of one. Oh, and
they're getting into the Capitol tonight.
The White House is posting a controversial rewrite of the history of the January 6th attacks. More than 1,500 people were arrested for crimes on that day.
Notice how all these cops are being physically assaulted by protesters, and not a single one of them is shot. But a lady who's trying to go away from ICE agents is murdered in cold blood. Interesting how that always plays out.
But in a new post on the 5th anniversary of the attacks, the official taxpayer-funded White House website calls the widespread descriptions of January 6th violence, when one officer was killed, 140 were injured, and 4 later committed suicide, Democratic gaslighting. The page reads, President Trump took decisive action to pardon January 6th defendants who were unfairly targeted, overcharged, and used as political examples.
The word that I'm searching.
1984 is literally a book about how a fascist regime constantly rewrites history to make itself look good.
The thing that I'm searching for is retribution. That's right. Retaliation. And what is that? It is accountability.
The pardon saved Proud Boys' Enrique Tarrio from a 22-year prison sentence for seditious conspiracy. 5 years later, Democrats held a solemn vigil.
Donald Trump and far-right extremists in Congress have repeatedly...
And again, what do the Democrats do? Pay lip service and do PR stunts.
...attempted to rewrite history and whitewash the horrific events of January 6th. We will not let that happen.
Yes, you will.
Demonstrators followed Donald Trump's call to march on Capitol Hill to overturn his election loss to Joe Biden.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Trump says he did not call for violence.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
But the Congressional Committee on the January 6th insurgency concluded he helped foment the riot and for hours did little to stop it. As the crowd called for the hanging of the vice president who certified Trump's loss. 5 years later, Trump is back in office, and the White House is rebranding convicted and pardoned January 6th participants as peaceful, patriotic protesters. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Washington.
I mean, what do you say to that? I guess the only thing that can be said is that the victors are the ones who write history, right? That is the famous line. To the victor goes the spoils. It is the victors who write the history books. And for better or for worse, mostly for worse, actually entirely for worse, Trump is the victor in this latest election, and therefore he can rewrite history however he deems fit, because he also successfully eroded our Constitution. So, if there ever is a major civil uprising in the United States and Trump is overthrown, that winning faction can choose to reinstate the Constitution with hopefully a lot more safety rails, and then restore the history of January 6th among many of the other rewritten histories, or ignored and erased histories, to their proper place. But it's going to require popular support of such a candidate, of such a person, to get into a position of authority, have an administration that'll follow through, and a Congress that will follow through, which does not seem likely at this point in time.
A new refugee settlement in Burundi. It was set up in December after 90,000 Congolese fled renewed conflict across the border in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. More than 60,000 of them have been brought here to almost nothing. This family is mourning the death of a loved one.
She was unwell for 3 days. In those days, she did not get the proper medical attention she needed. The healthcare workers should have taken better care of her.
How?
The dead.
These healthcare workers are clearly overwhelmed from the refugee crisis because, again, this country didn't have a strong enough medical care to begin with because of their own struggles, thanks to the United Nations imposing it upon them.
Are buried quickly in shallow graves on the edge of the camp. This refugee has been emphasizing to others the importance of taking.
You do make a valid point, Pop Culture, about not threatening to deport people who are using American Latin mottos, but I'm guessing we're not that far away from that either. It's a language that isn't English. And as far as he's concerned, that's not America first. They do all that violent stuff and says that they were peaceful, but a woman driving away is violent. Exactly. And he denies that he instigated the riot to attack the Capitol when he literally said, I know you guys are going to go to the Capitol and let your frustrations be heard. Like, excuse me? How is that not directly ordering that crowd or instigating that crowd to violence?
In the sick to hospital early.
People are not taking the sick to hospital early enough. My job is to go around the camp telling the refugees they will get help at the health facilities.
It's now the rainy season, and many are increasingly concerned about waterborne diseases. At least 2 people have already died of cholera.
It started raining when we were here. It wasn't a lot of rain, but you can imagine if it rains heavy, everything here, including the tents, floods.
Aid workers say they're struggling to meet the overwhelming needs.
There was this flash appeal. We barely have 10% of it so far. We got money from the emergency fund from the UN, and we got money from ECHO. So with the money from ECHO, we could improve the road to access the camp and start leveling the camp to build it.
But amid the despair on both sides of the border, there is still a moment of hope. A new baby has just been born. Bora Kazizi has not yet named her daughter.
I don't know when we are going back home. I pray for peace. I want her to go to school. I don't want her to keep fleeing.
For now, she says her wish is simple, that her baby survives. Catherine Soy, Busuma Settlement Site, Burundi.
Don't miss out and get the full picture.
If that wasn't bad enough, right? International conflict, fascism at home, rewriting history. We can't even do interesting science stuff.
There's a little less traffic in outer space today as NASA postponed a scheduled spacewalk due to a, quote, medical concern. Astronauts were set to exit an International Space Station airlock to finish work on a power channel. NASA gave this update today. The matter involved a single crew member who is stable. The agency says they are actively evaluating all options, including the possibility of an earlier end to the crew's mission at the International Space Station. All right, let's go live now to CBS News space consultant Bill Harwood. Bill, great to see you. How rare or common is something like this?
Well, it's extremely rare. You know, it's never happened in the history of U.S. spaceflight for a mission in progress to be cut short early. Now, the Russians had a flight like that back in, I think, 1974, something like that. They had to bring a cosmonaut back to Earth because of a medical problem, but it's never happened in NASA, and it's certainly never happened in the 25 years the International Space Station has been continuously staffed. So it's a big deal all the way around.
And Bill, NASA, we know, has a news conference scheduled for 5 o'clock. Can you talk to us about this mission and what a delayed spacewalk could mean for NASA?
Yeah, and let me back up 1 second. When I was speaking of something that had never happened before, spacewalks have been delayed, but a mission's never been cut short. That's what's on the table here. NASA hasn't announced that yet, but it is a strong possibility. So losing the spacewalk, that's not a big deal. You know, they've got time to schedule spacewalks down the road. This wasn't some critical path item they were trying to get finished. So that in itself is not that big of a deal. But the fact that someone got sick enough or ill enough or injured enough to prompt NASA to consider bringing them home early, that's a serious situation. And so we're going to be on the edge of our seat when this news conference happens to find out what NASA has decided to do about that.
Yeah, I'm curious, Bill, what happens when somebody gets sick when they're on the ISS? How do they treat that individual? Do they have...
That was actually my immediate next question. Like, people don't get colds on the ISS? Like, you don't get pneumonia? I mean, hopefully not pneumonia. I mean, granted, you're in space, so not much should be able to survive in space, but you're still creating atmosphere and breathable air in the ISS, which is the same environment that other bacteria and viruses thrive in. So, what?
A medical team? Or what happens?
Well, they certainly have a full medical suite on board the space station, meaning tools and equipment and procedures. At least 2 astronauts on every U.S. flight are trained to handle a variety of medical problems. One of the astronauts up there right now is a former EMT, emergency medical technician, and also a medical physicist at the Harvard Medical School before he became an astronaut. So they're well able to take care of just about anything that crops up. But obviously, something more serious, think things like appendicitis, a heart attack, something like that, that requires care on the ground. And in those kinds of cases, they want to get them back down as soon as they can. And of course, to do that, they have to take the entire crew with them. You know, these guys came up on a Crew Dragon. They would go home on a Crew Dragon, all of them together.
Right. I'm curious, when you say they're well trained, though, I mean, and you say maybe not appendicitis or open heart surgery, certainly, but other minor surgeries, perhaps? I mean, how far are we talking here when we talk about the equipment involved and then the training?
Yeah, I don't think any kind of a real surgery is contemplated by anyone at NASA. In those kind of cases, they would simply get in their ship and come home. Now, one of the interesting things about this is anytime a crew leaves, there's only one American on board. If this crew comes home early, that would leave just one American who launched aboard a Russian Soyuz to manage the entire U.S. segment of the station until a replacement crew gets up there. So if they do decide to bring this crew home early, one wonders if they won't try to accelerate the launch of the next crew so they could get them up there as soon as possible.
Sure.
So even this has a Russia fear-mongering spin on it, because this motherfucker was probably around during the goddamn Sputnik space race. All right. Fun fact, my uncle from Spain, who was a priest, lived in Burundi, which at the time was the poorest country in the world. He was a true man of God and wanted to be with the poor. He turned down positions at fancy parishes. Yeah, and we need a lot more of that in the world, for sure. In all positions, not just the church, but clearly the church. But imagine if we had people who actually gave a damn about the poor, the suffering, the needy in all areas of government across the globe. Imagine how differently society would function. Certainly wouldn't be having all this Russia fear-mongering, invasion of foreign countries, and murdering civilians in the street. Okay. Oh, wow. Some marginal good news?
The House is set to vote later today on a 3-year extension of enhanced tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. 9 Republicans joined all Democrats during a procedural vote Wednesday to advance the measure. The subsidies, which were at the center of last year's government shutdown, help millions of eligible Americans.
She says last year like this wasn't last fucking month. Are you fucking kidding me?
Americans cover premiums for their health insurance and expired on December 31st. CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is following all this from Capitol Hill. So, Caitlin, what can you tell us about whether it's expected to pass in the House and maybe what was behind that change of heart on the part of those Republicans? What challenges does this face in the Senate?
Hey, Lindsay, it's great to be with you. Well, this is going to be a big vote in the House tonight. It's actually going to be very likely that it passes because those 9 Republicans have signaled that they're joining Democrats to vote for this measure. How did we get to this point? Well, remember, before the holiday...
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there was a lot of constituent outcry sufficient enough that it could not be ignored over the sound of billionaire donations to their campaign funds. I'm thinking it might have had something to do with popular outrage, which goes to show that fascism is only as strong as the people's ability and willingness to stomach it. Hint, hint. If we don't want to stomach it, we don't fucking have to.
Holidays, there was a group of 4 Republican lawmakers who crossed party lines to buck their own party to support a discharge petition to force a vote onto the House floor on these health care subsidies. Now, what we're going to see out of the House tonight, this will likely pass, but it is unclear whether the Senate would take it up. And there's also a lot of reservations in the Senate about this plan. You may remember last year, late last year, they voted against this very same measure. So we'll see this vote tonight. This will be a 3-year extension of those enhanced premium subsidies, but unlikely to become law anytime soon. What is happening, though?
Which goes back to show that, yes, it forced the Senate to vote, but the House might not have been forced yet, which means, again, more civil discontent. Contact your lawmakers so that they can make the fucking law and force the hand of the president to fucking sign it.
This vote tonight is spurring momentum for some kind of bipartisan deal. Both chambers know that they have to address health care costs in some way, but what that looks like really remains to be seen. I've been talking to some lawmakers in those bipartisan working groups who are hoping to have some legislation out next week, but again, unclear exactly what that will look like. But today is meant to send a message that even in districts that have Republicans ahead of, leading them, swing districts that are up for grabs this coming midterm election, health care remains a big issue, as the president himself acknowledged earlier this week.
And
Okay, that's enough of that. Wouldn't be a recap without Epstein, which somehow vanished from the news due to all of the murder on U.S. soil and kidnapping of a foreign head and state. Imagine that.
The delay in the full release of the Epstein files has triggered calls for an internal watchdog review into the DOJ. Federal law required the DOJ to release its records on Epstein by December 19th, but government lawyers told the judge this week that only 1% of those files have been reviewed and released. Now, several Epstein survivors, lawmakers, and watchdog groups are asking for a review into the DOJ to see if it violated the law. Let's bring in CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen. So Jake, good to see you. Explain the legal question here and what this watchdog group would look into.
Good morning, Vlad. The legal question here is whether the Department of Justice violated a law that required it to release all of these Epstein documents by December 19th. Now, what we know, Vlad, is that Attorney General Pam Bondi said that the Justice Department got millions of files around the holidays that they had not yet.
Is somebody typing in the background of this interview? What?
Get reviewed, and that those files are actively underway. However, at the same time, Vlad, we know that these watchdog groups are asking the Inspector General's office at the DOJ, which is an outside independent monitor of the Justice Department, to potentially go through and figure out whether the Department of Justice is deliberately slow-walking this release and whether there are any other details they can come up with that would show that the DOJ is deliberately not listening to this law that we know bipartisan support forced President Trump to sign. He signed it, and that the DOJ said they would fully comply with. That has not happened so far, and we have not seen a new release of documents in the last couple of weeks.
So they're not releasing more documents. They're stonewalling. They're dragging their feet, XYZ, etc. And meanwhile, there is less than 1% of all files released in the first place. So hopefully the victims themselves come forward, like they've been threatening to do for a while now. Hopefully they fucking do it. And maybe, just maybe, it'll have enough consequences and ramifications to put a curb on this administration, if not finally get it impeached and removed. That does seem to be kind of doubtful, considering how many scandals and atrocities this administration has been able to weather thus far. Speaking of one,
the White House is making its case for President Trump's proposed $400 million ballroom. The updated plans are being presented before a commission that oversees federal building construction in Washington.
What's crazy about this ballroom is at first it was $90 million. And then it was $250 million. And now it's $400 million. Again, 1984, constantly changing history in the news so that the party, Big Brother, doesn't look the fool.
The review comes 3 months after, you may remember, the East Wing was demolished to make way for the 90,000 square foot space. In December, a federal judge denied a request by preservationists to temporarily halt the whole project. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now. Monica, can you explain why the Trump administration is presenting updated plans to this commission now rather than before we saw the East Wing being torn down?
Well, according to White House officials, Kate, they say they are doing this because they believe they are submitting these plans before the actual official construction phase begins of the president's massive ballroom project. They argue that the demolition phase was done separately and that that was something that was under their purview, that if the president wanted to do it, he could order it because there are different rules and standards and guidelines that apply to the White House grounds versus some other federal land. So they're
which is objectively false. That is objectively untrue. And you're not challenging it as a fucking reporter should.
They're saying that they are submitting these plans, which now include more details in terms of how big it's going to be, 22,000 square feet. It is going to accommodate up to 1,000 people in that ballroom. And they also detailed some new ideas about what they want to do, perhaps other ideas of construction and renovation throughout the White House. But they're saying they're doing that now so they can get official approval from these boards and then basically start the actual construction, even though we know there's been a lot of work that's already gone into this project. But they believe they're going to do that in early March if they get this approval. Kate.
We thank you for watching.
We did it without asking for permission. Now we're not asking for permission. Now we're just filing the paperwork. We're going to do this shit anyway because we have a judge in our back pocket. RFK Jr.
Welcome back.
made
The
news.
Trump administration
Wow,
unveiled new dietary guidelines that calls for Americans to ditch high-processed foods and instead prioritize protein and healthy fats. Health officials also released an updated version of the food pyramid that reflects those new guidelines. So protein.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right fucking there. It's not like Americans want to eat highly processed foods. That's the only food that's fucking affordable, you absolute fucking clown. You entire piece of shit. People would love to eat healthy, natural foods, but they are priced out of the possibility of over 50% of the population. You dense, idiotic motherfucker.
Dairy, healthy fats, vegetables, and fruits, they're at the top. Whole grains you see there are at the bottom. Our chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes spoke with Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about the new guidelines just yesterday. So Nancy, what did he say about these changes, specifically on saturated fats? And do other big health organizations share the same sentiment?
Well, he really stressed the importance, in his view, of people getting enough protein in their diets. And one big source of protein is red meat and chicken and things like that, that tend to be higher in saturated fats. But he does not believe that that is a bad thing. He is pushing for up to 10% of your calories coming from saturated fats, coming from protein, coming from full-fat dairy. And there is a lot of controversy over this particular point, because even though organizations like the American Heart Association like the fact that there's more of a focus in this pyramid on fruits and vegetables, less focus on processed foods, they have long-time concerns that there is a link between eating more saturated fats and cardiovascular disease. So I asked the health secretary about that yesterday. Take a listen. Mr. Secretary, the American Heart Association had a lot of good things to say about these new recommendations. They like the focus on whole grains, on fruits and vegetables. But when it comes to saturated fats, they say that saturated fats are a primary driver of cardiovascular disease. You said you're ending the war on saturated fats. Where is the evidence that that is a good idea?
Well, the problem is that there is no good evidence that saturated fats drive cardiac disease.
There's no good evidence that saturated fats drives cardiovascular disease? You think these institutions have been making this shit up to go against big beef for the fun of it? Are you actually fucking kidding me? This conspiracy theorist nutjob, who happens to share the same lineage as RFK Jr. and JFK themselves, is the greatest embarrassment to the family name of all time. And he is going to get us killed if people follow these guidelines. It's literally his own fucking opinion, which has no basis in fact or reality, but his personal preferences. I hope he fucking dies from a heart attack because he ate too many saturated fat foods. Like, this piece of shit. There are healthy fats, and saturated fats are not one of them. There's literally tons of evidence. RFK and JFK must be rolling in their graves. Like, I honestly don't know why they don't descend from heaven or rise from hell and possess this motherfucker and strangle him. I don't get it. Maybe there isn't an afterlife after all.
That is a dogma that was based on a 1960 study that has...
Based on a singular 1960 study. So, it looks like, well, here's one study, but that's not telling me how many there were done, so that's not it. A short history of saturated fat and unmaking of a scientific consensus. And the unmaking. This article recounts the history of diet heart hypothesis from the late 1950s up to the current day, with revelations that have never before been published in the scientific literature. Recent findings include shortcomings in the... so this is propaganda. This is propaganda. Awesome. Subsequent clinical trials attending to substantiate this hypothesis could never establish a causal link. However, these clinical trial data were largely ignored for decades until journalists brought them to light about a decade ago. Okay, so apparently you can pass peer-reviewed articles in the National Library of Medicine, unless this is part of HHS. Oh my fucking God. Oh, a reassessment and proposal. So there has been a significant war. Oh my God. Ah, Jesus. So now Google is actually making it harder to find the actual studies about saturated fats and are instead pushing the conspiracy theories. Outstandings. What the fuck? Well, I guess we're not going to be able to do this because apparently everybody has been changing their mind for the past several years. Great. Heart.org. Decades of science has proven that saturated fats can raise your bad cholesterol and put you at higher risk for heart disease. The more important thing to remember is the overall dietary pattern. Sat fats are just one piece of the puzzle. Eating more fruits, veggies, and whole grains is a way to achieve an overall healthy eating pattern. Which is kind of the point. And I guess all of the... I mean, look, 2025, 2022, 2024... all of them are changing their minds. I guess some of them are still sticking to it, but outstanding. We are getting misinformation from now medical science as well. Awesome. This is why this Kennedy hasn't been murdered. He's a POS, no need to assassinate him. Yeah, but that's the thing. He is literally at the head of the Health and Human Services department and is now leading the way of medical misinformation being normalized and put into the mainstream. So, wow. Not that you can't find the medical information about saturated fats being bad for you. You can still find it. You just have to search for it differently now, because Google will provide more links to the controversial and the conspiracy theory instead. Outstanding. Oh my God. Speaking
Secretary of
shittiness.
State Marco Rubio is meeting with officials from NATO ally Denmark next week. This comes as the Trump administration is pushing to acquire Greenland, which is a Danish territory. I want to bring in Dr. Sumantra Matra, the founder of Clio Strategic Consulting and the fellow at the Royal Historical Society in London. Dr. Matra, thank you so much for being with us. The Trump administration is stressing the importance of Greenland to Arctic security. Does the U.S. necessarily need to control Greenland to be more secure?
Well, it depends on what controlling means. We already have a lot of control of Greenland anyway. The Greenlanders and the Danes are bending over backward to give us mining and basing rights. We can go and invest there as much as we want to. We can have fisheries and hospitality industries there. Do we need to militarily annex Greenland? I don't think so. I think we do need Greenland for our security. Greenland has got minerals like cerium and lanthanum, which are very useful for chips that you use on your phones, on your Roomba, on your fridge. So they are quite important. And given the Arctic routes, which are obviously undergoing climate change, it would be an enormous security risk if we have Chinese and Russians ships controlling those routes. So yes, there is a U.S. interest in Greenland.
This is, I mean, can we just go 5 seconds in foreign policy without rehashing the Red Scare? Russia and China, the big bad communists, who haven't been communists for decades. And again, there is no reason to take over Greenland, militarily or otherwise, because we effectively have all the rights that we could possibly want to operate in Greenland in the first place. We don't need Greenland. We already essentially have it. Like, there's no fucking point other than a power grab in asserting our authority and dominance. It makes no fucking sense. I started doing keto a few years ago. I didn't tell my doctor. I had my annual physical, and when she got my blood work, she asked me, "What have you been doing? Your cholesterol is high for the first time ever." I told her that I had been doing keto. She told me to stop, that I could do a low carb, high protein diet and eat good fats. But eating tons of sat fat was a no-no unless I wanted a heart attack. Yeah. That actually happened to me too. I was making omelets every day, and I was eating 6 eggs in my omelet every day for about a month. And then I went to the doctor for an annual checkup, and they're like, "Buddy, whatever you're doing, you need to stop. What are you eating?" And I told him, and he's like, "Yeah, you need to not be doing that, or you're going to have a heart attack at like 28 or something." And what if they were communists? It's none of our fucking business. And that's kind of the point too. But the fact that we continue to demonize China and Russia as scapegoats for any little foreign policy thing that we want to do is absolutely insane. Hey, we need to conquer this land because Russia and China. Hey, we invaded Venezuela because of Russia and China. Hey, we're invading Canada and Mexico because of Russia and China. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, Russia and China can't be the excuse for every little thing, except it is. And people are eating it up, left, right, and center. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, the BBC.
Welcome to the Global...
Let's see what the BBC has to say, because they're usually so busy regurgitating American propaganda.
News podcast on YouTube, where we go behind the headlines to find out more about a story and why it matters. Today, as President Donald Trump doubles down on his territorial ambitions for Greenland, European leaders have united to declare firmly that the territory is out of bounds. France, Germany, Britain and others have said that Greenland belongs to its people and that only Denmark and Greenland themselves can decide what happens to it. But will a united European front be enough to warn off President Trump? We're joined now by our correspondent, James Water.
Considering he threatened to leave NATO, is in the process of leaving NATO, and in the process of leaving the United Nations,
House, who is in Paris for us. James, let's start off with this statement from European leaders. Why are they making this now?
They seem to have felt the need to put this statement out because of Donald Trump's repeated claims of wanting to annex Greenland. We are seeing an increasing number of senior White House figures refusing to rule out taking the Danish-controlled territory by force. And so we have this highly unusual, to put it mildly, scenario where you've got the ambitions of NATO's most powerful member making the rest of the alliance nervous. And, Mette Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister, she said, look, if enough is enough, and if America does try and do such a thing, then the NATO alliance would be dead. And we have to remind ourselves, this gathering today is about discussing concrete military promises for Ukraine. And what Europe's hoping to do is win over America to say, look, we'll stump up what we can militarily. Please help us in case we do end up in direct confrontation with Russia. And yet the dialogue now, the discourse is being dominated by the imperial ambitions of not just Russia, but America as well.
James, it's interesting. You were talking to us in Paris where European leaders had gathered to talk about Ukraine, but clearly the escalating rhetoric from President Trump's administration.
See, that's the naivete. It's not rhetoric. It was rhetoric at the beginning of the last year, but evidently it is now in play. We already attacked Venezuela. We are already occupying Venezuela. It is a credible threat, a clear intent by this administration to take Greenland. This is not a negotiating tactic. We have already shown a willingness, well, this administration, I should say, has already shown a willingness to use military force to get what it wants. And it is saying it wants Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, and Greenland. And it already took Venezuela. Y'all need to not be trying to think about things from a diplomatic standpoint, but rather creating a unified military front that says, if you take Greenland, we will fucking fight you. I don't know how else to fucking say this. Oh, so Trump can invade any country as long as it's not European. Yeah, and this is not a drill. It's really not. And the reporting on this as if it's just words and trying to pressure NATO into doing something else is absolutely batshit insane, because again, this administration is trying to remove itself from NATO as well as the United Nations.
Maybe hijacking the agenda somewhat.
It's hard to know what the motives are, but I think if you're seeing European leaders put out a statement where they say it is up for the people of Greenland and Denmark to decide what relations Greenmark was to build, then the problem there is that clearly they see the situation as being urgent enough for them to have to respond. You know, in the build-up to this, when we've been putting in questions and trying to find out about the details of this summit and the agenda, you know, the organisers are very keen to keep it about Ukraine and what help the Ukrainian military are going to get in the long term. And yet, by putting out this statement, that is now impossible. They have to acknowledge that America and its claims of wanting to annex Denmark now carry, frankly, more weight after the extraordinary US intervention we've seen in Venezuela. And I think what Venezuela also reminds us of is the military might of America. We talk about it a lot with the context of Ukraine and what it can provide. But when you look at the operation that was performed in Venezuela, that is what Europe wants to see more of here. They want such a capability, such a backstop, as they prepare to face Russian aggression in the long term.
And remember how I said the attack on Venezuela, the refugee influx in Colombia, it's psychological warfare. America is quite capable of fucking shit up. There is no question or doubt about that whatsoever. America is the most veteran military on planet Earth. It has seen the most combat for the most consistent amount of time out of any military on Earth. We have the most advanced weapon systems, or at least what we know about China having, I guess. Not that China's been able to actually use them, because China hasn't been at war with anybody. Right? America has. For the past 20 fucking years, the global war on terror. Right? And so, the transition away from that into a new conflict, it isn't that much of a transition. It's just business as usual for America. And we did pull off that strike in Venezuela in like a couple hours. And we are capable of doing that pretty much anywhere on planet Earth within 48 hours. Arguably 24 hours, depending on what the activity is. But the fact that it is now instituting psychological warfare against our allies, NATO, Europe, Canada, Greenland, and Mexico. Well, I guess Mexico's not our ally under this administration, but you get where I'm going with this. There is now a real psychological attack being waged against our soon-to-be former allies that America can and will follow through on its threats. Or rather, designs. It's not necessarily a threat, it's a desire of what it wants to do. And right now, they are in the process of doing it through psychological warfare. Again, if it wasn't a credible threat, Europe wouldn't have mentioned it. But it is now a credible threat. Rather, it's an inevitability that they are denying is inevitable. They think it's a threat at this point for some other thing. But we are seeing this guy is talking about it. This administration has shown its willingness and brazenness to do something this stupid. And now Europe is slowly coming to terms with the fact that we might be facing conflict on two fronts, Russia and now America, which would be a complete reversal of historical alliances in the sense that Russia and America might be the new Axis powers in that context. That doesn't have a direct alliance where they mutually support one another, but just stay out of each other's way. And if that's the case, Europe gets steamrolled within months. And if China decides to then focus on the Pacific theater, there's nothing to stop them either. Because most of the world's military relies on the United States, Russia, and or China. Europe is not relied upon by anybody. And most of the Latin American and African countries are dealing with their own regime change problems that were caused by Europe or American interventionism. India might have a fairly large army as well, but I don't know that they're considered a global threat. So, either which way, we are looking at major international conflict and at the very least breaking down of international diplomacy with the United States within months. Probably weeks at the rate we're going. And since all of my predictions of months have actually been weeks, if not days, I may as well just say it's a matter of weeks or days between before diplomatic relations with Europe devolve completely and the Caribbean becomes vulnerable to U.S. imperial aggression.
James, we've heard from the German foreign minister today saying that no matter what, Greenland would come under NATO's Article 5 security guarantee. What do we know about how NATO could possibly defend itself from its, as you say, its most powerful...
I'm sorry, what? There's been another ICE shooting?
Welcome
back, everyone, to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us, continuing to bring you some breaking news.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm still apparently dealing with my illness. I think it's the dryness of the air in the room, but...
This hour, we take you now out to Portland because there is an active investigation going on right now. We are learning that 2 people have been hospitalized from a shooting involving federal agents earlier this afternoon. We have a couple of vantage points that we're able to show you right now. The FBI saying that 2 people injured as it's investigating a shooting involving U.S. CBP agents on the Southeast Main Street in Portland, Oregon right now. So we will be keeping an eye on this here for you. Very active situation that is going on right now, but this investigation will continue, no doubt, and we will be getting you those updates all in real time. You can see here from...
Let's look at the comments. Ammo is fairly cheap now. Don't worry about cost overruns. TDS is a deadly illness? I don't know what TDS means in this case. And then you have the sociopaths. Oh, a lot of sociopaths. My bad. Wow. A shit ton of sociopaths. Okay, great.
Breaking now, 2 people have been shot by Customs and Border Patrol in Portland, Oregon. The latest details we're getting into the newsroom. Protesters hit the streets of Minneapolis after an ICE agent fatally shoots a driver. What Homeland Security is saying about the officer. And Revive I-5 is back. We're just a day away from the start of months of lane closures on Seattle ship.
How the fuck are you going to go with Portland killed 2 people, Minnesota murdered a person, oh, and by the way, I-5 is back up and running? What? Are you fucking... Okay.
Now Bridge, what drivers need to know. We begin with breaking news out of Portland today. ABC News is reporting that U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agents shot 2 people. We know it happened near East Burnside and 141st Avenue in Portland. The FBI will lead the investigation. We don't know the condition of the people shot, but the Portland City Council president says the 2 people survived the shooting. The circumstances of the shooting have not been revealed. In fact, we're waiting for a press conference to begin for more information. As soon as it starts, we'll bring it to you live on the air during this newscast. Developing now at 4, protests continue in Minneapolis after...
Okay, so is there a live broadcast right now? There is.
It's drying out for the later day around Ocean Shore.
Chinook and hard work. It was a little bit.
This tragedy was entirely preventable. New council member Eddie Lynn was more blunt in his comments, saying, quote, "Let me be clear, ICE is not welcome in Seattle. We don't want you here."
A full I-5 closure for drivers.
Okay, that's kind of... Is there no live coverage about this?
Breaking now, 2 people have been shot.
Oh, no, I didn't. Sweet. Okay. So, what a way to end this stream, because it's been a fucking shit show all day.
We want to get you now to some breaking news we are following. This is happening in Oregon, where federal authorities say that federal agents have been involved in a shooting in Portland. This is a live look here at the scene. These live pictures coming to us from right outside of a medical facility in Portland, where we understand this all unfolded. The FBI says it is investigating a shooting, again, involving Customs and Border Patrol agents. This happened in the east part of the city at that medical building.
Yeah, we understand that 2 people were hurt. Not a lot of information, though, about exactly what happened. In fact, we don't have any information on their conditions. We are working to learn more about what happened here.
You know what? Hold on a second. Hold that thought. Let me grab our constitutional references tabs here. Okay. I don't really know if we looked up the Second Amendment before. Oh, that doesn't want to load. Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, the War Clause powers. Hey, that's something we can definitely go over with Venezuela. But, you know, congressional war powers, declare war, Supreme Court jurisdiction, raise and support armies, so on and so forth, right? Where's... Oh, this is all Article 1. Gotcha. We kind of do want to duplicate that, and then we want to go to the Second Amendment. The right to bear props. Because this is a prop, not a real rifle. It's a prop. A very convincing prop. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, let's see what this is about. Because I'm rather curious. I don't think we've ever gotten into this level of it here. And evidently, it's having some loading issues. Why? Why are you having a trouble loading? The flying fuck. Really? I mean, it's the government website. Why are we having loading issues? Yeah, Fox News audience full of sociopaths. We're waiting for DHS to make up a story about what happened. That's true. This is what happens when you don't have videos from regular people recording. True. We have to wait for DHS to make a story. It's a pew-pew. They don't want us to read about our rights. Evidently not. Okay, but suffice to say, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, all I'm saying is, a free state is why we are allowed to have firearms. Bearing arms of any type is to ensure the security of a free state. And it is intended to be used against the U.S. government should the U.S. government become the threat to a free state. And if federal agents are going to start unilaterally murdering people or taking shots at people when we are exercising our First Amendment right, oh, am I being reported and shut down? I could see that happening. There it is. Are we still live, baby? Let's go. Let's go. Trying to see. There it is. All right, good. We are still here. So, if the federal government and their agents, CPD or CBD, Customs and Border Patrol, and ICE are going to start attacking civilians who are exercising our First Amendment rights to protest, then this becomes a tool to be used to protect and defend the free state, which is being under attack by the state. And by all means, Twitch, shut down my channel and send these fuckers knocking on my door. What I am saying is what is in our Constitution. The historical context of the Second Amendment is to fight back against an oppressive government. It is in the language. Necessary to a free state. A free state being that where the people have free exercise of their liberties and their rights. If that becomes infringed, that is when the Second Amendment comes into play. Just like we have the right to protest, we have the right to record, we have the right to be in their faces. They do not, at any time, have the right to murder people with impunity, period. Dot. That's also why due process was added to the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. So, go ahead and flag me all you fucking want, Twitch, and any of you conservative jackboot licking pieces of shit. Feel free to try and undermine my channel. But understand, that is the true intended purpose of the Second Amendment, to stop tyranny, to put an end to oppression. And yes, self-defense, hunting, and all the other fun stuff. Under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary, Karl Marx. Which is crazy because, you know, we were communists before communism was invented. Go figure. We have no rights. This is what happens when you erode the barrier between policing and military. You did this? I did this? It's my fault, folks. I'm sorry. I allowed Trump to win, and I didn't do anything to stop it. You're right. But no, you're not wrong either, True Steel. We don't have rights because they have been eroded because we as a people, as a society, have allowed it to happen. But we've also never been tested this way before, right? It's always been for national security, national security, national security. Well, guess what? Now it's social security. It's our community's security, our individual security. And if these jackboots can start going door to door or down the street or into grocery stores and just start opening fire, so domestic security, I like that. We're going to start using that as well. Write that down. I'm not joking. Write that down. So on that lovely note, my name is Samuel Ronan. I am your future president, and I am currently running for Congress in Ohio's 15th district. I am vehemently opposed to this administration's activities across the board. Most notably, funding ICE, no oversight of ICE, and the now apparent complete okay, I guess, of federal agents firing upon civilians without any sort of consequence. Vehemently against this. I'm also against the administration's foreign policy initiatives, which is apparently invading and annexing foreign countries of sovereign states. Additionally, I want to hold this administration criminally accountable from top to bottom and across the board, to include in the private sector, for crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes against democracy. It has been one hell of a first week of the new year. Never mind stream. So with that, it has been a full stream. Today was Recap Thursdays. On Tuesdays, we stream about U.S. news and policy. Wednesdays is Worldwide Wednesdays, where we talk about foreign policy and news. And as you saw today, it's a bit of everything. So with that, my name is Samuel Ronan. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please have a great weekend. Please do not confront ICE. Stay the fuck away from them. But start talking to your neighbors and start coming up with plans of protecting yourselves for domestic security. I'll see you next week. Have a great day.